Well, hello. Glad to see everybody. We're back. Got a special treat for everyone tonight. You know, I grew up in this area. I grew up in Daytona Beach. I went to Mainland High School, and you know, I went through the police explorers in high school and was always, very interested in law enforcement. I wanted to go into law, but things didn't work out. Wound up having children a little young, so I decided to go a different route, and I don't regret it one bit. My time at the PD was incredible, and there's one man that I just I admired so much because he's probably the best interrogator I've ever seen in my life, on TV, anything. I mean, this guy was amazing, and he had a way about him that you just liked him, even if you were a criminal. That is key. When you want to extract a confession and you want to get to the truth, people, developing that rapport is key, because it's just like if you're a salesman. If somebody doesn't like you, I don't care what price you give them, they're probably not going to buy from you. They're going to go somewhere else. They just don't get that feeling. They're not going to buy from you. Police works very similar to sales. You have to be able to sit down and talk to people. You have to be able to develop that rapport. And this man, Paul B. Crow, was one of the best, and the best that I've ever known personally. And I've rubbed elbows with some pretty great interrogators. I wasn't a bad one myself, but this guy was amazing. And I'll let Paul talk about himself here in a minute, but I came in and I spent a very short time on patrol because I grew up in the area. So I knew all the players. He could tell you if, he had a lot of people under him, but he remembers me. I was that little fast white guy that could run all the players down when they ran. And it took me places, got me in what's called street crimes, which was back in the day, back in the crack heyday, was crazy. So I was probably a headache at times for him, because all of us in street crimes were at some point. Right, Chief? But we got through it, and it was a great time. And Chief Crow worked, in my opinion, probably one of the most underrated, if there is such a thing, serial killers to ever walk the face of the earth. His name's Gerald Stano. And I'm going to let Chief Crow talk about Gerald Stano. But first, Chief, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just kind of talk about where you came from, your Daytona native, your time in Vietnam and things like that. And then we'll roll into some questions for you. Without further ado, Chief Paul Crow. There you go, sir. You got the floor.
Can you hear me, John?
Yes, sir. You might have to come a little closer, but I can hear you.
I was born and raised in Daytona Beach, 1944. Went to Mainland High School. Went to Daytona Beach Community College. Went to UCF. Before that, I went to Vietnam in late 65. Came back in early 66. I was a canine handler, a dog handler. A lot of us found out man was so primitive. Compared to Florida, you think Florida's hot. You get the news in the morning, it's 96 degrees. It was kind of hotter in Florida.
Yes, sir.
Daytime, we worked all night.
Hey, hold on a second, Chief. Hold on a second. Hey, Steve, if you got both up, if you got StreamYard up and you got the show up, you're getting an echo. So click out of the show or mute out of the show and keep StreamYard up. Can you mute? So you might have the show up and StreamYard up at the same time, so it's creating an echo. So just mute out of the show itself, the YouTube.
Just
Click mute. Yeah, mute that and keep. No, not that. Not that one. Unmute that one. Do you have the YouTube up and the StreamYard up at the same time?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, mute out of the YouTube.
This one.
All right, did you mute it?
You're not muted.
You did mute it? Okay. All right, that should be better, sir. Go ahead.
Mute what? YouTube?
Yeah, mute YouTube, but keep StreamYard open.
Where do I get it? Where do I go to mute?
If you have the YouTube up, it should be a little speaker there. You should be able to mute it.
I've got YouTube here. Speaker, where's the big page? Search my voice. Oh, chat.
That's paper that we was talking about.
This one here?
All
Is
right.
that good?
Yeah, that's better. There you go.
Better? Okay.
All right, Chief, go ahead.
I was born and raised in Daytona Beach. Went to Mainland High School, Daytona Beach Community College, and UCF. I graduated from UCF National Guard degree, criminal justice. Came on the department in 1966, making $95 a week.
$95 a week.
$95 a week. I lived on $20 every week as my token of survival. But, I went on the motors rather quickly after 2 years. There's some areas in the department that people like because you can grow on them better, get supervision better, and become a supervisor. And that was traffic addiction.
Right.
60s, 70s, and 80s, we went through the civil rights movement. That was a huge challenge. But overall experience, you put in, everybody else was putting in 12-hour days. We were putting in 20-hour days. We'd come on at 8 in the morning, go home at 3:30 and 4 the next morning. You get paid 3 hours overtime. So we've come a long way, to say the least. But I enjoyed one of them. Motors was an experience. Never rode a motorcycle in my life till I got on motors. But there's a difference when you spend 40 hours a week on a motorcycle compared to, well, Saturday we'll go for a ride. You know, you went through so many miles on that thing. You just felt second nature. You had the observation, you have to observe the traffic violation. You have to be able to maneuver in the traffic, and you have to talk on the radio at the same time of what you're doing. That's not easy at all.
And they didn't have headsets like they do now back then, did they?
No. You didn't need that. But,
I tell you what, when you sent me through motor school, I had a choice to either go to motors or go into CID. I went into CID, but I still went to motor school, and I was on Speedway for a little while. And I was a cocky thought I was a little badass on a motorcycle. I'll tell you what, I was never so humbled in my entire life as getting in the middle of Daytona International Speedway and learning how to do those keyholes and stuff. I tell you what, when I was done, I could ride.
well,
I was a rider then.
I took the contest to Daytona. From all over the United States, you can come here. We had that one contest we put you through. The riders from New York won every time.
Yeah.
The freeways up there. But it was enjoyable. I remember taking, we changed motors to Kawasaki's.
Yep.
And
Cal
they were
1000.
fast. fast. I took one around the speedway at 115. And you have to do probably at least 100 miles an hour or you'll flip right down to the bottom of it.
Yep.
So
You got to stay on the
was a
bank.
experience. Nobody put me in jail. I just rode around and came back and left. Those were some good times. Meet a lot of good people. Then I went into CID, and they put me in something every police officer needs to go through is undercover narcotics.
I was there.
I lived in Crescent City for 3 weeks, working the case, living out of a hotel room, putting everything together. Myself and Jimmy Beck.
Jim Beck.
And they'd had so many assaults on their officers in Putnam County. Well, you know, Jimmy Beck and I were kind of husky.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't have any problems.
God rest his soul. We just lost Jimmy Beck.
But those were, like I said, they would fly in narcotics from the Bahamas down to Crescent Beach. Then they would turn west and come into Crescent City. There was this one highway right outside the kid's house. They would land on, unload the narcotics, tear out, and fly out. They were doing close to 700 pounds a month of marijuana.
Wow.
There in Gainesville. But,
this was back in the 70s, right?
Right.
But for those that don't know, Crescent City is the fern capital of the world. It's where you go, if you go to the store and you buy a fern, it came from Crescent City. But go ahead, Chief.
One of those locations you have in narcotics is perfect. It's out of sight. Nobody knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
And too massive. There was an island in the middle of Crescent Lake. A homeowner on the island and won the island and the Truth or Consequences TV show. Well, Jimmy and I saw a nice area where we could fly a plane in, which Bill Smith flew. I could not have flown in with Bill. I'd have gone crazy trying to land it on that little strip. Jimmy and I went through and cut out all the branches. Oh, the runaway, if you will. But we made it down there. We made the arrest. It was good. But undercover narcotics is a different world. Totally different world. You can't have an FOP card on you. You can't have anything that says police. The type of guns you carried, I carried a 1911 45. It's so non-police, if you know what I'm saying. It's a hell of an impact. But, those things are just crack you up. You go through and come back out. Went back to motors again. I was a sergeant on the motors. And at that time, we were changing again, and Ronnie Beck made sergeant. Chief Willits came to me, and they were having some challenges in CID. For the last 2 years, they had a 14% clearance rate. And he was upset with it. So
14% clearance rate?
A 14% clearance rate.
Wow.
The national average was 21%. So I've always done really well in investigations, interviews, what have you, you know. So they put me in charge of major crimes in CID. We didn't have a lieutenant. I answered to a captain. And when I first went in there, everybody had blue jeans on and pullover shirts. I said, boy, we got a long way to go.
No, it's pretty cool, right?
They were dress pants, dress shirt, ties, and sport boots. So it's a lot of it has to do with discipline.
Yes, sir.
Standards of discipline. I love being a pair of blue jeans too. But the fact is, court cases, you have a coat and tie.
Right.
No blue jeans, no pullover shirts.
No, sir.
So we get back to your street crimes unit. Everybody wanted to go on street crimes. And Ed Shoemaker always told me you were the fastest guy on 2 legs you've ever seen.
But I was?
It was hilarious to me. It was a little over-aggressive, to say the least. How many times?
I got my 15-year-old son sitting here next to me, Chief. Did you hear that? He said I was the fastest guy on 2 legs he'd ever seen.
15-year-old son sitting there with him. You can turn that up.
Hey, people don't believe it, Chief, but I did run a 4.35 40.
Yeah,
I was pretty fast.
oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. We had some kids in high school. I graduated in 64, 4.2. And it just, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
He ran
Right.
7 touchdowns against Milton. That's when he got his application to Georgia Tech. Great kids. It's amazing how many friends you build up in high school, and then you go to military, and then you go to police. Thousands and thousands of people go through your life. And I think since I retired, we got almost close to 100 police officers that passed away since I retired. All great people. We never had problems like Chicago or LA or what have you. When I was in the military in August of '65, I was selected to participate in the watch riots that they were having. We got like 6 or 8 military bases here in Los Angeles area. That was a huge eye opener for me. Gave me a better understanding of how to deal with special events. How not to. I think they had 34 deaths in 2 weeks. Not the spring break we were used to. But 6 months later, I went to Vietnam. And again, a new world. New lifestyle. You had to be on your toes 24/7. But not from the enemy, from snakes, what have you. It's very full. Spiders. Canine, we were individuals. We didn't have to pull KP. We got our own tents by ourselves. People didn't want to be around us because we were with dogs. But the dogs were vicious. Vicious.
Oh yeah, I got a scar on my buttocks from one of those dogs biting me right in the right cheek.
Was that Dorman's dog?
It was Mac V. It was Gary's dog. Tore into my butt.
They got like 800 pounds of pressure in their jaws. Big shovels. Yeah. I went over with a Alaskan Husky, which they tried to convince me it wouldn't work out because of the heat. But he worked out really well. But he stood like 3 inches over a German Shepherd, had that curly tail. He was just beautiful. But since we worked just at nights, it made us different. But as time went on in CID, we had a bunch of homicide cases. Homicide in 77, 76, I got Chief Willett sent me to the FBI Academy on psychological profiling classes they were given. There was 2 of us out of the state that got picked. 2 in each state got picked.
Wow.
That was a big honor. And
where was that at, Chief? Where did you go for that? Did you go to Quantico for that, or did you go? Was that like it was Quantico?
Right. Their classrooms reminds you of the college. There's a tier system. Running your name with A, B, and C lights that would light up. You'd have to push one of those for your answer. So you can get embarrassed pretty quick. Say, Sergeant Crow, what did you mean by this answer? Goddamn. But the first day we were there, you ever see on Sundays, you get the cartoons, there's 6 things different, or one page or the other?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. They gave us a test on the first day. 15 things different on one page or the other. Whoa. That was crazy and that was fun. I did well on it, but it just raised the point you have to be focused and paying attention. That's what it was all about, paying attention from left to right. And there's a lot of things we did, but I learned the difference, and I learned the different personalities that commit homicides. Like participates there. To my surprise, your sexual battery cases was as big, if not a little bigger, than your homicide cases to be interviewed. So we spent a lot of time, went through the profiling, went through the personalities, what they do, what they don't do. And you have what I used to call, in legal situations, similar facts. If you have 10 burglars or 10 robberies, and the guy's identified as a black hat, red jacket, and white tennis shoes, after 10 of those, you can pretty much assume it's the same guy.
Right.
And that's some of what applied to Stano. I mean, similar run on the mark. Well, I had a case on Ocean Avenue. I looked at a young girl and invited a young man into her room that she knew. And he went a little crazy and cut her stomach open and threw bleach on her face and left. But she knew his tag was blondes, brunettes, or redheads. on the front of his car. And what portion of that? The investigator I assigned to it kind of dragged his feet a little bit. You got 10 days to make a report. And it was getting to the day part. Detective Johnny Power and Tim O'Brien worked in the boardwalk area on the weekend. Ran across it. And she showed him the wounds and what have you. And of course, then came back with a war story. Somebody needs to look at this girl, speed this investigation up. We did, and we came up with a person by the name of Gerald Stano, who was the fellow. When we sit down to interview him, as you know, I do interviews different than other people. I have what I call a soft interview.
Yeah.
Then I go into the serious stuff. That soft area, you can pull out a lot
Good cop, bad cop.
But I used to always tell him, you can't talk and listen at the same time. I'm a good listener. I'll listen.
Yes, sir.
He went through the system, pled guilty to the assault, started to leave the detective room, and I said, no, sit down a minute. I want to talk to you. He did. And I took out 2 photographs. One was Mary Carol Mahar, and the other one was her twin sister. And I said, you know, I've been missing these 2 kids for months, and I can't find them. Do you remember them? He looked at them both, and he put his finger with force on Mary Carol Mahar's face and says, I knew her. And walked back, and the detective said, what are we going to do? I said, have him sit down. He just told me something. He used her name in the past tense. That one photograph, that one word. They teach that in the academy now, listening to the words, how they speak.
Mm-hmm.
Within an hour, I had him confessing to the Mary Carol Mahar case. Got that locked up. And talking to him, we spoke about 4 more cases. And it took a while to verify that they existed. And slight interrogation interview about it. And I set up a system where Dave Hudson from the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, he was a detective, sat with me on the interview. And I told Dave, let me do the talking, you do the listening. So we talked about the 5 cases. He waived his rights. We taped it. And then I was talking a little bit about number 1, jump to number 3, go back to number 2, go back to number 5, back to number 1. Out popped number 6. He started to tell us about the girl he picked up on Main Street, went to Port Orange by the river, killed her. No, none of these victims lasted very long once they got in the car. That was the sad part about it. He took her from Port Orange to Titusville, and he struggled with her to get out of the car. This is his words. And it took around about 50, 60 yards, get out of breath, stopped, lit up a cigarette, caught his breath, and took her out further and hide her over branches, limbs, and what have you. Well, that's how we found about 90% of these kids the same way. It's the old thing where you, how do you say it, always looking locally when you get a homicide. I was talking to Gerald, talking to him like 6 years. And we had a good
You taught the Stano for 6 years?
fight. We were talking one day, and I said, Jerry, we've been at this a long time. I'm getting a little tired. Where are we? He says, well, we're 98% done. Yeah. What 2 of them missed? 2 in Gainesville. I called the county. They didn't know anything about it. I called the city. They popped up and recognized crimes. Investigator came. I had Stano, the investigator, Sergeant Bush in the room, and I was just listening. And they waived his rights, et cetera, and tape recorder, which showed you how sharp Jerry was. After about 10 minutes or so, he stopped the conversation. He said, you need to turn on the tape recorder so this will work right. Embarrassed the hell out of the detective. They hadn't turned the tape recorder on. So, what I learned from that, and we've always said, he drove from Pennsylvania to Gainesville, killed 2 girls, drove to Jacksonville, had his car detailed out, and drove back to Pennsylvania. He was 40 minutes late for work the next day. Meanwhile, everybody in Gainesville are looking for the local people. And this guy's gone. That's the difference with serial killers. once they get that driver's license, they go and go and go. When he wasn't in Daytona, he was in Tampa, St. Petersburg. You can see the cases similar to both parts of the state. But some of the things he would say would shock you. But we had a case in Daytona Beach. When you go across Rose Bay Bridge, there's 3 roads to your right, dirt roads to go back to the west, to the river.
Right.
We drove by him. He didn't say anything. We drive to the airport, turn around and come back. Drive by him again, didn't say anything. We came back. This time he stopped us. He said, let's look at this dirt road. I didn't know the name of the street's been changed. I thought it was Hall Road. It had a different number. Don Goodson, Captain Goodson, with the New Smyrna PD was with him. Tim Elder was driving the car, FTLA. We drove down the dirt road about a mile and he says, stop, we've gone too far, let's go back. Go back about a half mile, he says, pull over here. And he points to this huge pine tree on the other side of the little canal. He says, that's where I left her. Goodson looked at me and says, that's where we found her. So those type of things just all started coming together. Just accuracy, finding people and describing things without a sight.
So those are the pieces you started putting together, that this guy is much bigger than we thought.
Right. Just had a case in Altamont Springs to confess to. There's quite a tug of war or differences within agencies still. We did not get along well with the West Coast agency. They wanted to take the case and run with it, the heck with us. We said no. That's when I turned it over to the state, to our partner law enforcement. Now we got a state investigation. So they backed off.
Right. When you got FD.
It worked out well. Tim Elder was like my bodyguard the whole time. We were all over the state talking to people and what have you. But I was trying to remember that through that case, I had 13 grand juries, 70 depositions, 12 court hearings. Went well. You don't see that number with 5 or 6 murders.
Evidence.
Right. Right.
Grand jury, all those times. It just kind of backs up on you. The combination of stress here, I did not like the director of public safety position. I love being the police chief. Really brought home to me. I rearranged Bike Week, as you can remember. We started with 40,000 bikers. When I took it over, we kicked it up to 500,000 bikers. So everybody, the businesses were really happy within the city and county. My focus was on the 1%ers. 1%ers used to get really mad because we had that parade from Bel Air Plaza to the Speedway, remember?
Yeah.
7,000 motorcycles in that parade. So I sit with the outlaw people and I said, let me give you your own parade. Why don't you just go down Main Street? He said, man, are you kidding? I said, no, go ahead. Listen, traffic lights off for you, go over the bridge and Orange Park, turn around there for one. Well, there's like 5 different countries that were there looking for 1% bikers. They're really big in England, Canada, Australia.
Right.
And what happened, I had people on the rooftop with cameras taking pictures, tagged, and people.
I was up there. You had me on the rooftops.
We arrested 23 bikers outstanding out warrants. So they were all fit to tied over that. That was fun to me. That was fun. I honored the request. The Bike Week, when we got to the 50th anniversary, again, you got to watch what you say. I asked Marty White, CID, or to find the president of the 1%ers outlaws. Have him come in. I want to talk to him. Well, he came in with the bodyguard, secretary, sergeant of arms, and said, "Geez, Christmas." I said, "I want you guys to do me a favor. You name it, Chief. Try to be nice to people in Daytona. for the 50th anniversary. Give them a break a little bit. Just, I'll help you guys out sometime. You help me find you. They left. Next morning, I pick up the paper and an Oak Hill biker killed in his garage. He was left. Those guys brought back into the office, and I said, "What the hell happened?" They said, "Chief, that wasn't Daytona." Tim couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. They shot him with a .22 silencer. Killed him in his garage. Pagan. But they said we wouldn't kill anybody in Daytona, and they didn't. But you got to watch what you're saying, what you don't say.
Well, I still remember the SW we did on Beachside on the Outlaws. That was interesting.
They had come to us. We were wondering why Daytona Beach we had our own chapter, our own house on Peninsula, but they were never involved in anything. We thought, damn, things are changing. But what was happening? The guys in this club were making hits in Tampa, Orlando, all the way across the state. Finally caught up to them, like 6, 7 homicides they were involved in. They were the hit people.
Right.
They weren't doing anything in Daytona. So those things came up pretty quick. We got through those. But special events, as it grew and grew, we had people don't realize, we got under 200 people named up.
Yeah.
So we got 500,000 kids here for spring break.
Yeah.
Fort Lauderdale said we don't want you no more. So they all came here.
And to Daytona.
And Daytona with the rest of the 250,000 we normally get.
And then we had MTV come with them.
Oh, that's a long story. Yeah. MTV and I didn't get along. I thought Alan Robinson, the owner of the place, son, and she had 2 sons. I've known them since the 60s when I became a lawyer. And one of the things I liked about that motel they operated was after spring break, they would strip the room new. No carpet, no beds, no dressers, put everything new. You had to take your hat off to that. The rest of the people would just vacuum it up, wipe it off, and go for the next customer. That particular hotel did really well. And it was a genius to figure out around the pool that every 30 feet, $50,000, $50,000, $50,000 to advertise. It was pretty neat. But the bike week, what was fun about bike week, Ron Rice of the Hawaiian Tropic.
Yep, the late Ron Rice.
He would give me a celebrity every year. At Honda, not Honda, no, Fonda.
Peter Pan.
Peter Fonda.
Peter Fonda.
Peter Fonda, yeah.
He was big marksmanship for Harley Davidson. And I got photographs in my house here. Willie G. Davidson and Billy Davidson. Willie
Oh,
G.
yeah.
His dad was Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
We'd get different celebrities. My wife went crazy over a couple of them.
Well, Peter Fonda was quite the biker himself.
Yeah.
What was that movie he did?
Easy Ride.
Easy Ride. Yes. Yeah.
Yep. But he
Kind of started it all, didn't he?
Yeah. So I put him as one of the parade people. He got beside me in the road, no problem. The next guy was John Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, I could tell you a story about him, but
I can tell you a couple of stories.
the Coliseum, for example, I was working the detail,
Yeah.
and guess who he had in the bathroom?
Yep.
Ron Rice's wife.
Starting with a D.
That was scary. He was funny. He was a little shorter than I was. I'm surprised.
Yeah, yeah.
He had never rode motorcycles for this length of time. He never rode a big Harley. Always those little fast bikes.
Yeah.
But we don't go over 30 miles an hour. The only thing I would worry about is going across the bridge because it has those iron grates to it. And once your tire bites into it, you just got to follow through.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the drawbridges.
He was nervous as hell about riding that bike. But, got through with him. So many great people. I got to meet Chad McQueen, Steve McQueen's son.
Yeah.
just like his mom, thank goodness. It didn't look like it did at all. Sweet
Yeah.
kid, how to put it, just the nicest guy you ever want to meet. We got to meet a lot of great people.
Yeah. I've always told people that, you know, I did just about a decade, and me working at Daytona for just a year was equivalent to most departments working 5 years.
Yeah.
Because we were so busy all the time, and I learned so much, and there's so much diversity with Spring Break, Bike Week, BCR, all these events that we had, and we had to, you know, we're dealing with different people all the time. So
That's
you had to
not-
be special to work at Daytona. You really did.
Well, I always say if you can be a police chief in Daytona, you can be a police chief anywhere.
Yes, sir.
It's just a odd game, odd game. But we get into those issues that help you and hurt you. I'd send out 3 people to go all over the southeast United States, all the way to New Orleans, asking for help. When we had our last event, I had 800 people come here from other police departments,
Yeah.
49 mounted units. People.
Yeah.
We just wanted to get people to understand, you know, we're here. Each different event gave you a different perspective.
We're not going to lose it like Virginia Beach did.
Yes, sir.
Chief Hill from Virginia Beach came down and went through our bike week, went through our events. He came to me, so funny, he had his captain with him. He says, "I'm sorry, Chief, we don't have any problems like you do."
Well, you know, Chief, one of the saddest things I've ever seen was when we had mutual aid and had mounted patrol. I believe it was Virginia. Wasn't it Virginia that somebody punched the horse in the face, and the horse reared back and his foot slid down in the culvert and snapped his leg? And we had
I was Daytona
That's
Beach.
Dan Dalton.
that was Dan's. That was one of our horses.
Yeah. No, it was a South Carolina horse.
Yeah. It was South Carolina's horse. Yeah. Okay.
6,000.
And I that was horrible. And so the audience knows during one of our special events called BCR, Black College Reunion, a guy just decided he was going to walk up to a horse and punch the horse in the face. And when he punched the horse in the face, the horse, it was at Seabreeze in Atlantic, if I remember right, the horse reared back, and his foot slid down into the drainage culvert and snapped his leg. And they had to put the horse down right in the middle of A1A. One of the most horrible things I've ever been a part of. It was crazy. And that's just how cruel people are. And didn't that guy get a smack on the wrist for that?
Yeah.
That was insane.
All those things are sad, very insane. But you know, out of 8 years as police chief, never got a policeman shot, never got a policeman killed.
Yeah.
Was always proactive. You remember one saying, I was on the street with the troops. I looked at the same crowds with the troops. You got to assess that. You have to prepare for the worst case.
Yeah.
You have preparation here, but you don't use it. You try to do the best you can with the numbers you have in front of you. They got
Yes,
75 state troopers out at the football field, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, waiting on my call. And I had the National Guard out on Indian Lake Road doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Then I had the mobile field force where every 4 blocks was a van with 3 or 4, 6 officers.
Mobile field force training. I remember doing that.
So you have.
I was almost one of those guys you didn't want to have get killed. Remember when I got shot at in South Street? I don't know if you remember that or not. I was doing surveillance, and somebody rolled up, and they rolled up when they weren't supposed to. And I was basically there by myself. We were at 3 different locations, and I saw him bail out of the car and go to run in. He's carrying 2 keys, and I took off chasing him, and I caught him, got the dope, hooked him up, had the wagon come get him, and I was pulling out. I don't know if you remember, they loaded the back of my car up with 9 rounds.
Yeah.
And I was pulling out, and I said, "Daytona, I'm taking rounds. I'm code 4." And boy, I tell you what, You want to talk about mutual aid? Everyone came. Holly Hill came. South Daytona came. Beachside came. They converged on South Street Project, and it was. I've still got the tail ends from that Chevy Caprice somewhere. I think it's at my mom's house with the round in it. Shot my tail ends out. Went through my back window. Blew my rear view mirror off, and I could feel the rounds bouncing off the pavement and hitting the undercarriage of the car. That was some crazy times.
During the civil rights movement, Joe Gallagher and I, they took us all to put us in cars like that. And we were chasing the car down Martin Luther King. We got down to Loomis, and Joe had the red lights on, things going, no problem. All of a sudden, both sides of the road, pop, 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 pop. Like you said, I could hear the thumps on the side of the car. I bent over and put my left hand on Joe's thigh and pushed it down.
Get the hell out of Dodge, right?
Hell out of Dodge. And I always said code number 1024. Always keep in the back of your mind when you get these things. You need help, be surprised how many people will show up from all agencies. 1024. You're getting your butt kicked and you need help.
Well, we had some good times back in the day, but you know what? Police work's not the same anymore, Chief. Can't do things that we used to be able to do because of these things right here. It's just, and that's not saying that we were doing anything wrong, but it's just, you just can't do the things that you used to be able to. You had to improvise. I mean, you created a street crimes unit for a reason. I was to go out and find and be proactive and find crime. And I just recently talked one of my best friend's son out of being a cop because I asked him, why do you want to be a cop? And he basically said, I want to catch bad guys. I said, well, I'll tell you what, buddy, you won't last long. If you go in there with that mentality today, you better go just answer your call 10-8-7. That's serve and write good reports, and you'll wind up in CID. Do good follow-ups and do a good investigation for those investigators. Make a name for yourself, but don't go out there and try and be proactive because you just won't last today. And it's sad to say that, Chief, but it's true.
Probably one of the biggest compliments I ever got was from one of the officers. He said, "You're a chief's cop." I love it.
Yeah, exactly. You always had everyone's back, and that's true.
To my police chief, my officer, I had a city commissioner coming to the office. He said he called 911 2 or 3 times and got no response. I said, "Don't you work in the state office?" "Right." "Did you call 9, get outside the line, and then call 911?" He got pissed, dropped his cane, and walked out of the office. I told him, I said, the last month you made 3 complaints against my officers. They've all been unfounded. I said, I'm getting short fused with you. So he left. We didn't have any problems. But you get those things happening to you, and you don't see it on the street. But to cover the officer's butt, be with them. Only one thing, and you'll recall what I always told them: just tell me the truth.
That's it.
Tell me the truth. I'll work this out for everybody's good. Don't tell me the truth, and we're gonna.
Yes, sir.
Stano's case in '93 surprised me. I just got promoted as director of public safety over the fire and code and police.
Right.
We had that one other time with Oscar Folsom, it didn't work out. It's just, I realized the uniformed police officers were getting jealous. I'm not spending time with them like I used to. Not going to scout meetings or coming out at 3 a.m. and seeing how you're doing. 40% of my time's fire. 10% of my time code. So what's left with the police officer? 50% of my time. So I resented that. But in 1992, I got a subpoena for evidentiary hearing in Orlando in front of a federal judge. It was time just to, let's get everything off the books here about writing books, doing this, doing that. And Marty White always told me one thing I remembered. He says, Chief, once people raise the right hand and sit down in court, you'd be amazed how little they know anymore. That was true. That was true. They'd call in my captain. He didn't understand where all this came from. He was calling the detective. He didn't understand where all this had come from. All that FDL agent, he didn't understand where all this came from. So we got down to the real facts. Well, I gave my compliments to Mark Olive, who was the attorney for Gerald Stano. He and two other attorneys,
For capital collateral.
Capital Collateral. They were quite a pain in the butt, but it was an enjoyable fight. But I have two things I remembered from the 60s that I had met F. Lee Bailey, prominent attorney at the time.
F. Lee Bailey. Yep, I know who F. Lee Bailey
He
was.
said a plane or said there was a helicopter down on the beach behind the Plaza Hotel. I was on the motors. I went up there to be sure nobody was hurt. Mr. Bailey was there with his coat and tie and Pall Mall cigarette, adjusting different things on the helicopter. And he explained to me about it, what have you, and he was giving a seminar right here at the Plaza Hotel. So we talked a few minutes, and I said, well, everybody's okay, I'm going to leave. He says, young man, you got a good career coming up. I want you to remember two things. What's that? It's not what you know, what you can prove. Okay? He says, do your homework. Never ask a question unless you know the answer.
Exactly.
That's back in the 60s. So that stayed with me all the way through it. Before I'd ask Stano a question, I already knew the answer. You go through it. We went to the federal hearing. What was hilarious about it, I had a briefcase, about 40 pounds of information. In the briefcase, when I'd go up to the U.S. Marshals, they wouldn't check anything. They just say, Chief Crow, go around and go in. So I did. I didn't realize I was going to be on the witness stand 5 straight days, just me. Then we had Saturday and Sunday off, then I came back Monday and Tuesday. That's a long time to sit in that chair. The attorney came up to me and he says, I called him Chief, Director of Public Safety, Detective Sergeant, Captain. What do I call him? You call me Paul. I'm into those mind games. And we started, went through it. And finally he fell victim to that. He says, wouldn't it be true if we don't have a weapon in any of these cases? I said, no, sir. I've got the weapon from Mary Kurt Mahler's case. As a matter of fact, it's in my briefcase. Bad decision. I brought it out in plastic bag, FTO on it. The judge started hitting the gavel hard as he can as he demanded that the U.S. Marshals be brought in. They did. I felt like crawling on the table when they came in. To chew them out, and they left. They just pointed their finger at me and shook it. Young man, don't be doing stuff like that. I said, yes, ma'am. And
What was that weapon, Chief?
it was a buck knife.
It was a buck knife, a foldable buck knife.
Right.
Okay.
Sad situation, and one of my best friends, but Gerald picked up a girl on the boardwalk, took her behind the church on one of Halifax, just before you get to university, around back, and she took her clothes off, and he reached down for his knife, and he dropped it, slipped out of his hand. And she bolted from the car, and she ran across the street behind the house, knocked on the door, they let her in, they called the police, put out a bolo, and Jerry was stopped at Grandview in Maine, and her clothes were in the back seat.
Wow.
She was brought to a stop, and she identified her. But she's a college student. She didn't want to sign an affidavit against her. She just wanted to go back to Chicago. Didn't want nothing to do with it. That really frustrated me because once I went through the records division, file division, I found like 7 other cases where his name was mentioned, and they walked away from him and ran away from him. And I did the chart. I got subpoenaed by Gerald. I didn't get subpoenaed by the state. So I couldn't talk to the state about anything.
Right.
So I had the traffic engineer draw me up a chart. I went in early and I put it in the judge's office. And I mentioned to one of the attorneys for the state, I said, you need to check the office over there later on. Well, I had the traffic engineer draw a map. University Boulevard to what we know back then as Broadway.
Right.
And Had 7 victims. I punched down there, blue, like you do your traffic accidents, blue figures. They survived. And the red ones, they died. 3 of them were right at the Holiday Inn boardwalk outside. We picked them up, drove them away.
3 of the reds, 3 of the homicides.
Right, they had died, and the blue ones that survived, they had picked them out also. So it wasn't like it was just one little isolated thing. He participated with a lot of kids and people in Daytona. We just didn't realize how far he would go or going.
That chart's right over here, that map.
Yes, Steve, you want to grab that chart? Just kind of show the audience. This is the chart that Chief Crow's talking about. Now we're talking about this was in the 80s, right, Chief? When this was done, early 80s.
92. I had a traffic engineer.
This was 92. Okay.
Engineer put that together, scale block. I already had
Can you
that.
see that?
Yeah, we can't see the street names, but you can see that it's a map. And this just so everyone knows, this is back in the day when we didn't have the technology we have now. This is the way we had to do it.
We didn't have DNA. We didn't have nothing. Some of the facts started backing up, showing each case. Like I said, I had the Water Department, law enforcement, their people to do profiling. I didn't. We have a lot of people involved there. Dave Hudson was a huge contributor. Tim Elmer was a huge contributor. Most of the cases were in the county. Matter of fact, Maryfield Ballhard, there's a ditch that runs east and west. She was found on the north side of the ditch. That was Daytona. The south side of the ditch was the county. So he missed by 15, 20 feet. But he mostly did everything in the county. And the thing that I always say, once he picked them up, it was a matter of 5-6 minutes before they'd be dead. And he would drive them to these locations and dump them. He would dump them. I don't know why somebody started mentioning I was writing the book. I never have written a book. I've been in about 25 of these podcasts. I've had people from LA that, want to get involved, get interested, what have you. I never wrote a book. I had to rely on other people's books to kind of remind me what the hell I did. But the court case went on, and she agreed on the state's motions against us. She threw those out. Mark Oliver presented. I've had he would do what I call a search and destroy. He would come in and with a subpoena and get all your records and look at them. Well, in my record file, I had a yellow sheet off the yellow pad of that drawing of the east side of the river. It came up missing.
Right.
I said, okay, you want to play these games? I had the traffic engineer draw the one up the scale. Worked perfect. It was so funny. He came up to me and while we're talking, he said, that was tricky stuff you did with that chart crawl. I said, yes, sir. You had a stuff that I wouldn't have to do. So we had some good conversation.
So Chief, when I was in training, I think Mark O'Leary took me out off of Bellevue Extension, and he showed me, by the airport there, he showed me the exact spot where you recovered one of the victims that was covered up with brush. Which victim was that? Do you recall which one that was?
Very first one, Mary Carol Ballhard.
Is that the girl that went to Daytona State? Is that the swimmer?
Had hundreds of trophies for swimming.
Right.
My brother and I are good friends now. John, he was a Navy SEAL. And
Yes, sir.
one thing I listen to people all these years, and one thing I disagree with, there's no closing, there's no closure. People say, well, we could just do this, we'll get some closure. That doesn't happen. If your son gets killed, you're never going to forget that. How, who, where, even though you might find out who did it, there's no closure with reality. I think of all those victims, I got 2 thank yous.
Two thank yous.
One was John Malhar, Mary Phil's brother. And Ramona Neal, her brother, was a captain in Houston, Texas.
Mona Neal. Now, didn't she have a daughter that turned out to be a prostitute or something?
No, that was another case.
Oh, wow. I mean, because that name, I know that was a victim, but there was a Mona Neal that was a prostitute too.
19-year-old kid, just outside of the hotel, those little huts they had there with trees built up along Ocean Avenue where you can go sit, watch the ocean.
Yeah, the hill.
They took her up there, picked her up there. She was in her bikini.
So when you recovered the buck knife, where did you find the buck knife? How did you get that?
Under his driver's seat.
So were you able to link that through forensics? Were we able to link that to the other homicides, or were they just too decomposed to get any kind of?
Blood was from her. Nothing from him. He was very clean about what he did. He was an odd person. He would choke people to death. He would shoot people. He would stab them to death. So it was just not one thing he would do.
Which is unlike most serial killers. He was unique in that aspect. So he didn't have the same MO every time. He used a different weapon.
Mahar was an interesting case because, as you know, I never gave out 100% to the press. I'd always keep something back.
You would.
When I looked at her, she had a stab wound in her left thigh. 13 stab wounds to her neck and chest. And then all of a sudden, this mysterious stab wound to the thigh. And I relived that, trying to picture how the heck that's done and what have you. And we got in a conversation one day. I said, this girl you picked up and so-and-so. I said, where did he? He said, well, I turned south on Clyde Morris. And she started getting really pissed because we weren't going towards her home. State Road 40. Well, what happened? We got in a fight. I said, well, she's a fighter. She'll put up a fight. Yes, she did. And I stabbed her here, stabbed her there. And he said she tried to get out of the car. So I reached over with my knife and stabbed her in the thigh and pulled her back. Even the coroner missed that. I had him go to the funeral home and do another autopsy on her. Showed the stab wound.
The one in the quad where he stabbed her in the leg.
Right.
Was that Reeves that was the ME back then?
Might have been. I'm thinking body.
Dr. Body.
Oh, was it? Yeah, you know what? Reeves let me, my first homicide, he let me actually do the Y incision, and he let me do everything. I got to cut the top of the skull off and everything. He just handed it to me while I was eating a sandwich. True story.
Some of the things you have to do. He said, well, she's been shot 6 times. I said, no, she's not shot 6 times. I knew that the guy used a 38 Derringer to shot. And so I stopped at the Winn-Dixie, and I got this thing, what do you call it? Screws, metal pokers you can put through your food.
Oh, the skewers.
Yeah.
Skewers,
yeah.
Took her to the medical room, and I put one through the left arm, out the left arm, into the chest. I said, that's one bullet. Oh. So it was a 2-shot gun, 1 6-shot. Some of the things you have to do to.
You never recovered the gun though, did you?
No.
Did he ever tell you where it was?
That was another case on the beach side of the real estate office. Zachary handled it. In the middle of the investigation, we had always a little bit of frustration between Captain Powers and I. He's gone. Died, passed away. Great guy.
JP?
No, Martin.
Oh.
Captain Powers.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was upset with the case. Spring break was coming up. It was taking up so much of my time. Give it to some other agency and focus on the beach side with these kids drinking beer. Well, we clashed. We clashed big time.
Priorities.
I said, so a 17-year-old drinking beer is more important than Hollywood. Oh, he got pissed. So he walked down the room. About 20 minutes later, he came back in with a very thick folder. Instead of sitting on my desk, he tossed it. It was the taxi cab case that it had been on the airport, if you recall. He was burned up in the cab, he was shot, he was stabbed. Reading a report, there was a green detective that was investigating the case. Of course, my question is, did he have a senior person with him? No, I didn't need a senior person, blah, 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 blah. I left it alone. So I did my homework on the case. Believe it or not, 3 days later, I cleared it. And 5 years sitting in it. So, but I went back to the cab company, like you're supposed to. I listened to the tapes. I went to the store, and I've always said I'm the luckiest son of a gun there is in these investigations. And I went in, a lady behind the counter, it was in Holly Hill, 711 on Flemish Avenue, identified myself and mentioned the case. She says, no, I haven't been there that long. But the lady in the back, Mary, was here when that was done. Bill. So I had her come out and talk to her. She had went on vacation the next way up Wisconsin or somewhere. Didn't come back for 2 weeks later. All that floated right by her. Didn't get. So when I showed her the photo lineup, she picked out the guy that I thought was the suspect. Went from there.
You know, I always heard this story. I always heard this story, Chief, and I'm not sure if it's the one that you were describing, where one of the victims tried to get out of the car and he reached over and he plunged a knife in the buck knife into her leg and pulled her back in. Was that on Mason at Clyde when
Right.
he was?
Mom.
Because that's the story that I heard. I mean, I never heard it from you, but somebody else told me, and I don't recall who, but said that a unit was, you know, the old cemetery that was there was cut because we could cut through that cemetery and go into Skeeter Creek, which was we called it Skeeter Creek, everybody, or Cedar Highlands. And he said, I heard this story that he told you this story that when he came by that cemetery, a marked unit was coming out. And as he got to the intersection of Clyde Morris and Mason, he was in a turn lane getting ready to turn left onto Clyde Morris, where he went out to Bellevue Extension and dumped the body. But now I don't know if this is true. This is what I heard, that the unit was pulling up and she was trying to get out, and he saw the unit coming, and that's when he plunged the knife into her, pulled her over, and then reached over and plunged it into her chest and slumped her over in his lap. And then when the officer rolled up next, he waved at him. Is that true?
Never heard of that.
See, that's the story I heard, though. I was telling Steve about that, and Steve never heard of it either. But that's what I heard.
True, it's very around the corner there. But instead of going out to Tomoka Road, State Road 40, where she lived, we took a left. And that's when the tension got hot quick. She put up a fight. Stabbed her in the chest, but she got out, stabbed her in the thigh and brought her back in. Her head fell against the dash. She started throwing up everything. So,
right. That's awesome. So what I kind of wanted to get I wanted to know at what point when you set Gerald down, did you realize that this guy's done way more, probably multi-jurisdictional, state after state, and he is a prolific serial killer? At what point did you develop that rapport with him that he began to open up and tell you about these other cases? I know we had the cases in Volusia County, which is our county, that you made you with the state attorney's office, correct me if I'm wrong, made a deal with him that if he, to avoid the death penalty, he would plea out to those cases. But where he screwed up is he had diarrhea of the mouth, and he wanted to confess to other cases, which got him in trouble.
he accidentally confessed to number 6.
He accidentally confessed to number 6?
Number 6 was. I called Kathy Kelly. She ran in the paper and came back with Susan Vickers. And we initiated that and called them, and they had found her in the woods there.
He was from Brevard County.
He was from Brevard County. That's how that happened. But, Kathy Kelly was a huge help for me. interviews, she could find anything. We forget about all those. It's like when I first started talking to him with a light interview, I said, "Where do you go to relax or kick back beer or something?" He said, "Tomoka State Park." So I'm smiling, went on. I got 3 murders in Tomoka State Park. Mona Neal was one of them. But then he said he'd killed a girl and left her on I-95 and one of the center line of 95 where you got all the woods and stuff. And she had a shirt on that said, "Do it in the dark." And that's about 2 weeks later, one of the traffic people working in those areas mowing the grass found the body, t-shirt on, "Do it in the dark."
Wow. So Tomoka State Park, was a body found so a body was found in Tomoka State Park itself or on the outskirts there?
There was 3 of them found up there. And he mentioned the fact that's where he liked to go to relax. So here's answering my questions and don't realize what he's putting on paper to me. This one, at the same time, he mentioned that other girl with that shirt would do it in the dark. County cleaning crews found it in the grass area in the center of the highway. Shirt said, "Do it in the dark." We never had her identified. We never connected anything with her. But you remember that shirt name?
Wow. So in the end, he wound up to you. He confessed to what, 41? Am I right? Is that right?
Yeah. I think he confessed originally to 88 cases.
He confessed originally to 88.
88 cases. The from New Jersey, Pennsylvania to Florida. The challenge I had with the New Jersey case was the fact that he and Ted Bundy were both in that city at the same time.
Right, I remember that.
So it was hard to connect the dots with that. Some of it looked like him, others didn't. But do you remember the girls were in a convertible? I mean, that thing's information. You go, damn, I remember that stuff. But,
so you struggle with the fact that you had a victim, but Ted Bundy and him were occupying the same space at the same time, so you didn't know which one potentially did it.
it's like when Ted Bundy was tried on the case in Stark, Florida, a young lady. That was so Stano. One of the cases he did. Bundy's wife called me and wanted Stano to be interviewed about that case. We didn't do it. We left it alone. They had a marathon trial. Between Bundy's long trial and I don't know if you remember the Tylenol company.
Yep.
Products. So
Yep, I remember when that happened.
that totally pushed Stano aside. Both of those two. We just kind of went under the fire with him. But as time went on, he was so much like Bundy in their style. When Bundy decided to go into the dorm in Tallahassee, is when he made his mistake. And Stano wanted to go into the apartment on Oast Avenue, he made his mistake. As long as they left people in the woods, we were having a hard time connecting with us.
It's hard to work those crime scenes, isn't it, Chief?
Yeah, I mean,
It's a lot easier to work a room. You know, people don't understand that. It's a lot easier to work a room than anything outside. So basically what Chief Crow's saying, everyone, is Gerald Stano kind of had the limelight, for lack of a better word, taken away from him, because at the time, the Tylenol cases were going on. And if you guys, you know, some young people won't remember that, but anyone about my age, I'm 56 now. But if you remember the Tylenol cases in the early 80s, that was consuming all the airtime. So Gerald Stano wasn't getting much airtime. If it hadn't been for that, I believe a lot more people would know about Gerald Stano, don't you, Chief?
Right. Oh, yeah. The Bundy case has occupied the TV for months.
Yep. And they were on death row at the same time.
Right.
Weren't they?
Right. Right.
And
Yes.
Stano actually was kind of like Houdini. He got out of death row a couple times. I think they had a malfunction on old Sparky one time, correct?
The first time he came within 2 hours of being electrocuted, closer than anybody else has come. And they had a malfunction, so they had to postpone.
Wow.
I kept hearing from Mary Carol Longhorn's father, who was in New York. They would call me every time they would have an execution put up for him and go through the same old story again, trying to assure him justice will be this and justice will be that. But it was not a sure thing. Not a sure thing.
Aren't they executed within a week of each other?
You know, there's been there's these haters out there, Chief, that especially with the Innocent Project and all that. Whenever you have a serial killer, there's always, he didn't really confess. It was, he was coerced and all this stuff. Those rumors are all flying out there. Investigations being done because they open up these cans of worms because they don't want to believe that someone could commit these heinous crimes. And, you're the investigator. You handled these cases. I know deep down in my heart that Chief Crow would never put somebody in jail or put a case on somebody that wasn't true.
I've
So,
got people out of jail. I had an attorney, John Tanner, called me. He was in private practice. The client he had passed his polygraph. I'm listening to him. It was not robbery. So I get back to you, John. So
hold on, Chief. I'm sorry. Who took the polygraph?
John Tanner represented a young man who took a polygraph and he passed it. So John and I went to school together. He
Right.
called and said, "You need to look at this case again." He passed the polygraph. I said, "Oh, yeah. So about 3 or 4 weeks later, he called back and he said, "Paul, I'm telling you, I took him up to Gainesville and passed the second polygraph." I said, "Okay." So I called Detective John Power in. John was one of my go-to people. And I sickly wanted. He drove to Sanford where the guy lived and he found 5 witnesses that the guy was there and this alleged crime was going on. So we cleared him up. But no, I try my best to be level-handed with him.
Well, I think that's where a lot of people lose reality when it comes to the investigator and the perpetrator, is when you have a good investigator that can sit down and get to the truth and develop that rapport and that trust. He trusted you, Chief.
Right,
He forgot you were a cop, in my opinion.
right.
So you were more of a friend than a cop. He
It's
felt like
all
he
role.
confided you in anything.
He offered the role, I played it, and it worked out really good. Sometimes you fall on your face with those things. We had, at the same time, I had the Derbyshire rapist cases going on, and I was doing both investigations. And he did like 12 there, about a year and a half. And I had a victim call. Same thing. Remember I told you about the rape cases how they fall in several categories. You have a date rape, and you have a gang rape, which are solvable, you know what I mean. And then you have the 3, a power rapist, an anger rapist, and a sadistic rapist. Well, they will graduate each class as time goes on. Derbyshire rapist was an anger rapist. When you say, well, what makes these people do these things? Well, they quit raping after 9 months. His wife had her baby, their baby. He stopped. Sometimes.
So why would you stop?
Well,
You're in jail, or
yeah.
Did you clear that case? Did you clear those cases?
They took him to jail. He got 30 years. The victim, I liked her to death. She was a topless dancer at one of the hotels. So a lot of people misinterpret this. She wasn't a great witness. I have a problem with credibility. But she was a pistol. He came up to her apartment posing as a security guard and put his foot in the door. Her girlfriend was sitting down in the parking lot in a convertible Corvette. She watched the guy walk up the steps. Well, he forced his way into her room. She had mace on her counter. She sprayed him with mace and kicked him between the legs, and he went out the door. As he's going down, the girl sitting in the car recognized him too. I took them both to the police department, and I did independent profiles. Sit down with the numbers. She looked like this, looked like that. There was only one number difference between the two pictures. So I don't like doing it, but I put it in the newspaper and put his picture in the newspaper.
You're talking about the sketch kits.
Right. And the next day I got a call from the head of security at Humana. He said, Paul, I was Marty White's dad. He was on the motors at the time, that's Marty White.
Yeah.
But, he was head of security. He said, I had a guy look just like this work for me. And I fired him. He lives up on Derbyshire. Really? So that opened the door for us. And I did a photo lineup. They picked him out. We went through a marathon trial with him at the same time the Stano case was going on. And I had the case, which was the Mainland High School. He had raped 5 girls in and around Mainland High School.
Right.
One of the cases where they were doing a DUI certification update. So I lost everybody but Clem Mallett. And I told Clem, find us an old truck or something. So he did. And we went out to Mainland High School at the very south end where the go-kart track is.
Yeah.
We parked there and we're looking out over the field. About 40 minutes later, a kid comes around the athletic dorms and pushing a bicycle. Pushed it all the way across. He got in front of us. He didn't see us in the truck. He picked it up and threw it behind the car. And he walked up the hill and turned. Well, 20, 30 minutes go by, and I see this young girl coming around the corner with the books in her arms, typical. And we were watching him like we're saying to each other, I didn't believe in this. I didn't believe in this. And she kept getting closer. All of a sudden, he stands up and starts running down the hill fast as he could right for her. What do? I signaled the horn to the truck as loud as I could. Scared him off, turned around, and ran back over the hill. When we get out to chase him, and Malik made a great suggestion. He says, Chief, get your handcuffs. Handcuff the bike to the truck. So I did. As we got up in the dunes, we heard the bike going off. No. So we came back, we could see where he tried to get it off. The next day, as you recall, I would go through every police report we had. That was part of my job.
Right. Yeah.
Find this varsity bicycle Kmart. What's his name? He works at the Bermuda Club. Blah, 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 blah. He's a 7th degree black belt in karate, computer leads, and so forth. So we arrested him. We had him in the chair with John Fowler, Detective Division. Had leg irons on him and handcuffs. They kept telling John, these are really too tight on my ankles. Can you loosen them? He said, well, when Sergeant Crow comes back, we can loosen them up. Didn't want to do anything. Didn't have the manpower there to help him. So the guy said, okay, got a little irritated, stood up, jumped in the air and screamed and pushed his legs apart, broke the ankles on the legs. They went up to the roof and broke the light out. Then he slipped right back down.
Wow.
But he broke them.
He snapped the chains on the leg shackles.
Right.
So the guy jumped up, snapped the chains on the shackles, broke the ceiling,
Lights.
the lights up in the ceiling, broke those, and then sat back down in the chair. Just to show that he could do it because he was pissed because they were too tight.
Right. John being so funny, he says, I always wonder how you guys did that. And I showed up at the time we got the conversation. Thinking the first appearance, he did the same thing. So
Did he really?
Those insane suits where you all wrapped up around and the zipper in the back.
Yeah.
And all that. He couldn't get out of
Straight
it.
jacket.
Straight jacket.
But all those were in the pot at the same time. So it wasn't like we were just focusing on Gerald Stano. He was just one of the mix. Every morning, I had the best detectives in the world, best detectives we ever had. You have crimes against persons, crimes against property, hotel, frauds, and all of those. Rick Dilley was all of those.
Yeah.
God, we went through so much back then. I would read every morning. I'd have to read 75 to 125 police reports and decide who should get what if I should assign them. I give so many crimes against persons, robberies, or what have you, over to them. The hotel burglaries always frustrated me because you have no witnesses, no serial number, no fingerprints. Just we went to the pool and came back and it's gone.
I hated getting those cases, Chief.
I hated that. I used to wouldn't assign them. I just give them to them as information.
Right.
Chief Willis came in the office one Saturday. He says, "What are we doing about all these motel burglaries?" I said, "Chief, calm down. By the end of the day, I'll have at least 70% of these cleared." He laughed and walked off. And I changed them to police information for suspicious incident.
Right.
You know, what are we going to find here?
You gave them a running report number, right? So they had one running report number, if I remember right.
I used to say when you call back to the hotel, they're going back to Tennessee, they're going back to Chicago, and you're left with zero. So why waste your time? Unless you can find a collection of something, the serial murderers, what have you. But that was a fascinating career. The profiling school was unbelievable. The who's who. One guy did all the sex crimes. You got to remember they're getting 40 to 60,000 cases a year just on rapes throughout the United States.
Yeah.
Murderers. And the system just puts them all together for them. You can start lining them up. The guy who did sexual battery cases, we went to lunch. He had such a hilarious personality. He calls the waitress over. He says, "Come over here and hurt me and talk dirty to me." How about telling the chair? Geez, this is an FBI agent. But he was on top of his game. I would call him constantly and get feedback from him. You know?
So he's a profiler,
Right.
and you utilized his knowledge. So on the Stano case, what kind of profile did you develop on him? I mean, was there one in existence before the prostitute was stabbed or cut in the leg? What was, I think, wasn't what, fix me on that, because I'm confused on how that happened.
I spent a lot of time at the homicide scene, and you notice how the body is positioned. You notice where all the stab wounds are focused.
Right.
And you had the leg, thigh stabbing, which is a little confusing.
Right.
So nothing about that. I often tell investigators in school, keep something back that nobody knows. And when that guy mentions it, bingo.
Yeah, exactly. That only the killer would know.
Right. But his consistency with the stabbing, his consistency with killing somebody in the car within a brief time before he took them to another location. Normally people just shove them out back in the street and leave. You wouldn't. But very thought about that. Always hated the term we find them in a dump site. That was always frustrating. But he had characteristics, like we said, with different personalities. Just like in your sexual battery cases, the person that does those is a power rapist.
Right.
And with sadistic, which is a Bundy.
Well, his motivation wasn't sexual battery, correct? I mean, did he ever tell you why? Did he ever give you a why?
He had a huge anger, so much disrespect for women. It was unreal. Once they got in the car and they made him mad, there was no coming back. No coming back. And he was quick and very lethal. Just discard the body, go back home.
Is that the Blind Fury title, of the book, The Blind Fury? Is that where that comes from? Kind of that? Do you think?
I didn't know she was writing a book. She came to me after the federal trial, introduced herself to me. and wanted me to do a profile to the book for it. And I glanced through the book. I said, no problem. And I did one for it. But Kathy Kelly did one also. A very good book.
And that's a judge. That's a judge's daughter. That was what judge's daughter was that?
Schumer.
Schumer. Yes.
She never told me anything. I was kind of in the air over it.
And you never got penny one for that book, did you?
I never got bigger ones in the whole damn case. I really think it's just doing a public servant work. And that I get off with. Either putting a smile on somebody's face or answering the questions they never got an answer to. I enjoy that.
So in all your, in 6 years with Stano, I remember hearing too that he was adopted, and there's a correlation between serial killers and being adopted. And I remember when I was in homicide school that we talked about that, and there are many serial killers that they come to find out that were adopted, and he was adopted when he was 6 months old. And the actual, from what I remember, they denied the adoption because he was so mistreated that he was eating his own feces out of his diaper.
Right. He was a blue baby.
He was a blue baby?
Blue baby. He just didn't have all those faculties right. The head nurse there fell in love with the kid and adopted him. And you go back to his track record, and you say profiling. I had information in throwing rocks off the interstate overpass onto cars. I had information where he was killing chickens. All those things. I've had parents come up to me before and said, I'm worried about my kid. He does this, he does that. I said, do you have a dog? Yeah. Is he healthy? Yeah. Don't worry about it. Usually they'll kill the dog, take him apart, trying to figure out what makes him survive. Do that with chickens, do that with rabbits and everything else. That's just a symptom.
So he was doing autopsies on animals, and he was one of the ones, like we had a case where somebody was throwing the cinder blocks off of one of the overpasses, and so Stano was doing that type of stuff.
Right.
See, that's the first I'd heard of that.
Right.
Did we have cases on him for that, or did he just tell you about that?
That's all done. That's all the profiling you do. Just learn about what he did when he was young. That'll tell you a great deal. He had 15 jobs in 2 years. That's another something.
He worked at Hampton's Chicken.
Yep, that's where we found him. He was cooking Hampton's chicken.
And then you heard the chief talking about the Derbyshire rapes. Hampton's Chicken is right there on Derbyshire, which is just it's a couple mile long road.
Right.
And I used to get chicken. It used to be the best fried chicken in the South. And I used to get chicken there. I used to live in Denise Terrace when I was a little kid, Chief. So I would ride my bike all the way up Derbyshire to grab some Hampton's Chicken and ride it back. I moved away from there when I was about 7 years old, but my mom would let me ride my bike up there to get it.
The Detective Bureau would eat lunch there all the time.
He still doesn't take credit cards to this day. He's cash only.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. But all during that time, I got great support from my wife. I didn't realize that this life and death people out there that would go to no ends find their cause. I'd get phone calls and phone calls and phone calls. How bad I was, what an SOB I was. Why am I trying to kill this guy? You just did this, did that. My wife was part of answering those phone calls and getting upset. Like my son would tell you, I used to go on long drives on the beach, just trying to clear my mind and refocus with it.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit, Chief. We've got Miss Crow there, and we've got Steve. Steve's an attorney now for all of y'all. He actually worked at the state attorney's office. But the impact that this case, in particular, the Stano case, I would like to hear from those two on the impact that you went through with your family as you were deep involved in dealing with all of these homicides that he allegedly had done, and you were trying to prove. How did that affect the dynamic of the family?
Yeah, that's my wife. She can answer those questions.
Miss Crow.
Well, it was a long time ago, but, and Steve was very young then.
Yeah, I was only 9.
He was like 9 years old at that time. It was intense around the house. Paul and I both have tried never to take our work home with us and, not talk about it unless we had to. This was impossible with this case because it was on the news, the newspaper every day. It was on TV news. We started getting phone calls from Geraldo Rivera's office and all these, the big TV stations out of New York. They were calling and wanting, and newspapers all over the state. And so, it's just your life is kind of overwhelmed with it. And I think I got to a point, Paul generally will not tell me details, mostly because I don't want to hear the details. But when you start seeing I remember one time there was a newspaper spread that was done when they had several of the victims and their stories, and they had pictures, and I don't remember which who put that out, but I think it was in the Daytona News Journal as well as several other papers. Maybe it was the St. Pete Times. I can't remember.
Times, yeah.
And anyway, it was like there were like 2 pages or whatever of these photos of these women, these young ladies, and their stories and what had happened to them.
Like high school graduation type pictures.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And one Sunday, I think I was reading through that, and I got about halfway through it, and I got very sick. I said, it just hit me, the reality of what this man had done, and what, and being a mother, when you become a mother, you start, and I'm sure dads do it too, but mothers especially, you start thinking about the horrible things out there. And so it was quite overwhelming. And I got to a point where I kind of had to say, I'm not watching the news. I can't do any of this. And it was hard to stay away from it because the phones were ringing all the time. For somebody who's supposed to have an unlisted number, everybody in the world has our phone number.
Right. It's amazing what the media can buy sometimes, isn't it?
Well, we've always sort of, Paul's always sort of had an open door policy, and it's when we've had neighbors call or people that we've met in the grocery store and they know he's I need help, they would call. I mean, that's just the kind of guy he is. And so it's like you can't get away from it.
Usually at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, we would get many calls in the middle of the night, but especially parents worried about where their kids are or things like that. And it was hard to get away from it, but we got through it. We've been through a lot together. And again, Steve was very young. I don't know that he remembers too much about what was going on.
I could tell there was stress in the family. I didn't know why. And Dad and I went on a lot of long car trips, drives. I didn't know to nowhere, just all around the county and Brevard and back. Didn't know why. I just was just riding in the car with Dad for some purpose. And,
Well, I can relate, and there's just some things that you can never unsee, and it's hard. And I was telling this story because when I left the department, it was not long after I got shot at, but I was going through a rough time with my divorce and stuff, and I felt like, it was better for me in a department if I took this other position that I was offered, and I miss it every now and then. I miss it a lot, but I miss the people more than anything, and the great people that I rubbed elbows with, and that Chief Crow hired on that department. There was some great people, and you know what? You get in. People don't believe me when I say this, but I worked in street crimes, and I can tell you, of all the years that I worked, I never once, and I know it happened. I know but I never once heard an officer use the N word. Never. I know that sounds crazy. People tell me that it's I'm full of it, but I never heard it. I know it existed and I know it happened, but to hear the things that are being said, and just by me starting this show 4 months ago, I've been vilified just for being a cop, just because I was a cop. I mean, it's like it's almost like they have an outlet to be able to disrespect a police officer and get away with it, so they do it. And I don't know where that comes from today. It bothers me because I always felt like I became a police officer because I truly wanted to help people. And there's sometimes that I regret not taking that motor slot, Chief, because in motors I probably wouldn't have become so desensitized, if that makes sense. Because what happens is, and it doesn't matter what officers will tell you, but when you work in a specialized unit like street crimes and narcotics, OSI, CID, when you work in those units and you're dealing with the worst of the worst all the time, it's hard to not become so desensitized and lacking in empathy that you take that home with you sometimes. And I found myself becoming someone that I didn't want to be, which was a very judgmental person at times. And I don't know what happens to people in law enforcement, but that does happen, and it's a demographic thing. It matters where you work. Daytona, like Chief Crow said, everybody, you have no idea what goes on in Daytona Beach. If you perimeter ride, and that means you drive Speedway, Clyde Morris out, and you stay in your perimeters, you're all right. But if you get off in the off of any of those side streets in there, you're in the garbage, and you can't help but becoming a little cold-hearted. It happens, and it's so hard not to take that stuff home with you. Like you said, Ms. Crow, it affected you and the family, and I know, because I know the type of man that Paul Crow is. He brought it home because he wanted to solve these cases, and it's just the way it is. And when you said, Chief, a minute ago, hold on, I lost you guys. Steve, come back in if you hold on, y'all, let me make a call here. All right, log back in whenever you can. I'll pull you back up. All right, bye. Yeah, we dropped off of StreamYard, y'all. But Chief Crow is an amazing investigator, and we'll get him back on here in a minute. And he developed such a great rapport with Gerald Stano that Gerald Stano felt like he was his friend. He can confide in him in anything. He called him from prison multiple times, giving him more information on cases. And when you have somebody that's confessing to that many cases, you get.
Yep.
Are you back?
We're back.
Yeah, sometimes that happens, guys. I'm sorry.
Blame
But-
spectrum.
Anyway, I'll get off of that. But I wanted to get the dynamic of the family and what it did. And Miss Crow, you did an excellent job Steve, I know you were a young buck then, but I know, your dad probably talked to you like you were a man. He didn't talk to you like you were a little boy, because I know the type of personality he has. He treated
Well,
you
he
like
made me read the book Red Dragon. At
he what?
Red Dragon. At
Red Dragon.
age 13.
He made you read it?
Yep.
And what kind of impact did that have on you?
Well, I can't be in a well-lit house and have dark woods around me without worried about someone looking in the house. Because that's what the guy did. He stalked his victims, stayed in the tree. They found carvings. He had been there. He was doodling and stuff like that, watching his victims.
Right. Right.
And even to this day, closing the drapes and things like that.
Red Dragon kind of introduced to everybody what type of people are out there. True. You just can't believe little things. I would go into a house, go into the bedroom, and I'd look outside, seeing what trees were available for somebody to climb up and check them out just because of Red Dragon. But I know when I retired, give me an idea, I had about 5 police agencies wanted me to sign up with them. And I was just so burnt out from cop work, police work.
Yeah. I got burnt out.
Yeah, I turned them all down and just went into the animal business, training horses, riding horses for a living. Didn't love me back. Had surgery to that. It was a lot of fun. Talking to animals like talking to humans.
Well, you did what, 31 years before you retired? Was it
32.
32 years and you retired? So you guys are all looking at a man that's given 32 years of his life to public service. He made how much a week? 90. How much a week did you make when you first started?
$95 a week.
$95.
I made $5,000 a year.
And we had a child at home, and it was just, I wasn't working when Steve was a child, so it was a lot to pay out of that $95 a week.
Well, you know what? And with the economy, the changes in the economy, when I started in 1986, I only made $18,500 a year, Chief. And I had 2 kids, and things have gotten a lot better, but there's some things that happened while I was there that I didn't really there's people probably out here that are union people. I'm not a pro-union guy, and I never really. That's part of being in law enforcement that didn't want to bring something at the Teamsters union, and you try to get the Teamsters union as representation for law enforcement. I didn't want to have anything to do with it, Chief. I was so appalled. I'm like, do you guys even realize who the Teamsters? I said, I'm a lot younger than a lot of you guys, and I know what the Teamsters is all about. And you're going to bring the Teamsters in to represent us? Chief, I'm sorry. I didn't get a good feeling about it.
That was I wanted to go with the FOP or something locally. And as things happened, things didn't work out. And they had to go to another one. There was so much energy at the time and frustration with people. Just everybody had their own little camp they went to, so to speak.
Right.
Union, Dad, and you were president of FOP when you were a patrolman.
Right. Actually, used to crack me up. I used to one time I called for a slowdown during Black Week. And about 10:30, 11 o'clock, I got a call on the radio from Captain Palmer. Wanted me to meet at the precinct station. And I did. He says, what's going on? I said, what do you mean? There are 2 tickets issued in the last 16 hours. Yeah. Then we went around the corner. He put his hand on my shoulder. He says, what's up? And I said, Captain, we haven't gotten a raise in almost 3 years now, 103. We just like to have a 3% raise. He says, well, I'll tell you what, you get the troops back to work, then I'll start politicking for you. And he did, and we got 3% raise. But sometimes,
and it was as easy as that, right?
Sometimes you got to grab them by the foot, you know what I mean, to get their attention. But I'm sitting there waiting, but I'm the president of Fraternal Order Police. Steve Folsom, he's my guest. It was just hilarious, same deja vu for me.
Right.
Never got submitted anything that says this is what we want, what have you. They just wanted to argue it by themselves. So it's the power to be.
Sir, and some of my closest friends were like pressuring me, and I'm like, look, I said, it's not so much about having representation because I was an FOP, but it's who you're asking to represent us. I just
You don't like you. They like money in the pension system.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't want anything to do with it, and it actually made my decision to leave a little easier because I didn't want to pay those dues to those people. I'm sorry, it just didn't feel right about it. Didn't feel right wearing a badge and having basically, this is an ignorant statement now, but the mafia in my mind representing us, and that's just the way I felt. And I'm sorry.
Express that to the troops, express that. But they got caught up in a mistake or something. I don't know. But they didn't have a few years and did just what I told them was going to happen.
And it's weird because some of the guys that were anti-union got thrown bones. And then all of a sudden they're union. And I really lost respect for a lot of people that did that. I mean, you had guys that were just standing on a soapbox, totally against it, and then they get thrown a bone, and now they're for it. And I saw this stuff happening, and it was just really bothering me. And I don't know. People to this day are pro-union. I think unions are part of the problem in this country, to be honest with you. I mean, that's why costs are so high. We've got anti-labor laws now that we've had for decades. We no longer need unions, and I'll get a lot of hate for saying that, especially from northern states. But I just don't see it as a need anymore. It's just a money-making machine for a lot of entities, and it's wrong.
When I started as chief, Chief Philip Ash was one of my favorites. He really helped me with a lot of my direction and supervision and what have you. But I wanted to change how we pick people as captains. I just didn't want to take whoever's on the number one list on the test. Do they really have any background when they can go into finance? Do they have any background that supervise detectives, et cetera, et cetera? In my opinion, they didn't. Well, it's confirmed when I retired. He didn't give any captain passing score. So, when I became chief, I went before civil service and I asked them to let it be my selection as captains. And through the city commission, we got an approval. And people missed this in 4 years, 1 year, I retired 4 captains, 4 lieutenants, 4 sergeants, and 4 senior patrolmen. That opened up 32 promotions. You never talk about that.
No, they don't ever talk about that.
It
Gave opportunities.
4, 5, 6 years before you can get a promotion and come up on the bulletin board. But I cleaned house the best way. Everybody says, you can't do it, civil service. Bull. We did.
I scored a 98.75 on that exam, and I got put on the bottom of the list.
Yeah. I remember
98.75. I had to drive the paddy wagon for, 8 months before I finally got my opportunity. Carl Lemberger gave it to me.
Yeah.
And I think what got it was because when I worked the wagon, I was always out there, and I caught a hit and run driver that, I don't know if you remember, on Atlantic Avenue in front of the 7-Eleven, hit this teenage spring breaker, and I went on a I'm gonna find this vehicle, and I found it parked off of Grandview, tucked up in it busted the radiator, so the radiator was leaking out into the road. And as soon as I found that, they marched upstairs, caught the guy. He was sitting on the toilet. He was so upset. And I got an attaboy, and shortly thereafter, I got my opportunity, and I loved it. Learned a lot. But then I went into the private sector, Chief. I'm sure Steve told you, and I worked. I took what my knowledge from the PD, and I went in and I worked organized retail crime.
Mhm.
I did surveillance all over the country. I surveilled people from Houston, followed them all the way down to the Clevelander in Miami, sat down next to them and bought them drinks as I was documenting their organized retail crime boosting events. And then we wound up doing the first racketeering case ever in organized retail crime. Was that entity out of Houston? That guy was actually the owner of a distribution center that was actually reselling our product through fences that were coming to him, reselling our product back to our stores.
Hmm.
That was crazy.
You
And
know,
I learned a lot. Hell, I made 125 grand a year doing that, Chief.
I was good. I was good.
company car, suit and tie every day. Walked around. I did audits. I did it all. I did major investigations. I did sex crimes. You name it. I actually put together. You were gone, but I put together another fencing case where we took down a bunch of the stores. Chitwood was chief then, and we took down I think 8 or 9 stores for fencing. The Red Hat ladies out at the flea market. I don't know if you remember that case. That was a huge case. I worked that. That was a big fencing project, or that was going on at the flea market. So that was a $2 million case.
It's a big case.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when I said I wanted to pick people specifically for different departments, I had 15 upper management people. 11 of those went on to be police chiefs other places. So you can proofs in the pudding.
Yeah.
2 of those guys were Daytona Beach policemen, Denny Jones, Spike Capri.
Yeah. I just talked to Craig not long ago.
But
Yeah. I went to his retirement party.
no chiefs ever accomplished that by itself. No chief ever
Whatever happened to Tim O'Brien? I mean, that's a guy that should have been a CEO at some big corporation.
Jimmy was kind of hard-nosed, to say the least. Now, Timmy rode with me when he was a cadet. I was a patrolman. He would ride with me until 3 in the morning, then I'd take him to his apartment and live with his wife, let him off. And Tim got his education from a good source, if you will. We had a blast together. But his father-in-law has this big mobile home type business up north.
Right.
And he asked him to come on as a manager. Couldn't refuse it.
Yeah.
He took it and left.
Well, it's my family, Robin's Radiator, so I always kind of avoided being a part of that, but it was good for a lot of my family over there. And then you've got the camper sales. It's another one of my relatives up there. He kind of split from the radiator business and went up there and started that RV sales and stuff. He kills it up there. Does a great job.
Yeah. Those things are caught on like dynamite.
Oh yeah, especially nowadays they have. You know.
So he went on his way there. He was a great commander, captain.
Yeah, he was. He's one of those guys that just kind of didn't say much, but didn't have to. He just kind of
took that after me.
What's that?
He took that after me.
Yeah.
You always got to warn me,
and I was telling Steve about this. Remember when we were doing drug interdiction? You had us out on the interstate, and we
never forget that.
We were doing drug interdiction. It was during the Vogel days, and we go, and Sean McGuire was Sean took me wherever he went. He took me with me. He's kind of like my mentor, Chief. So he took me a lot of places. But we were out there, and northbound is the dope side, southbound is the money side.
Right.
So the SO was getting greedy, and they were always working the money side. You know all that, but we flipped around and they go out of service, and we were, I don't know if you remember this or not, but we went on up to right at the Ormond line, and we started working southbound when they went 10-7. And I go to pull somebody. I get behind a car and I'm pacing it. I'm doing everything. The car has not done anything. So all of a sudden, boom, deputy blows by me and cuts me off and signal 50s it, pulls it over. I'm like, that's odd. So I spin around, go back to the guys, and I said, hey, did you guys? They're like, yeah, we saw him fly by. I said, well, he just snaked me on a stop. They did it again. I think it was O'Leary or Chris or one of those guys did it again. So I call into to McGuire, and I'm like, hey, I don't know what's going on out here, but we're getting snaked by the SO. They're cutting us off on traffic stops. And next thing you know, and you were always, Miss Crow, we had seized a lot of money out there. And Chief Crow said, I don't want you telling anyone about this stuff. Low profile, don't tell anyone. It goes, it's seized, forfeited money, and it goes into the police fund, and we get to buy equipment with it and all that stuff. But no one needs to know that. We don't want the news journal, all over this.
Well, no Joe.
What's that?
No Joe Hollywood.
No Joe Hollywood. And but it got out. And that was the rumor, that they found out that we were out there invading their territory. So the next thing you know, I don't know if you remember this, Chief, but I got a subpoena to federal court in Orlando, and they were going after Vogel for pretext stops, civil rights violations, all that good stuff. So I told them, they're like, they asked me about that incident, and they're like, oh, we got him now. So, because I couldn't testify that I saw anything for a legitimate stop. So I said, but wait a second. I said, I don't know what happened before us. So that was it. It was over. So I couldn't testify as to what they saw.
You mean there could have been a traffic violation?
Yeah, it could have been. They could have been shooting radar north of us, and but that was the kind of stuff that we went through. But the integrity that Chief Crow had, everybody was, you just don't see it anymore. You just don't see it. There was another chief that came on board that gloated about everything and had to be on the news all the time. You'd never see Crow on the news.
Well, yeah, PLOs, right?
People dirtbag, just Chief Crow would never do something like that. But real quick back, and I know you're probably about ready to wrap it up, but let's get back to Stano real quick and wrap it up. So basically, in a nutshell, you developed Gerald Stano off of a victim that got away, correct?
Live victim.
Right.
And then
She was cut and made a bleach thrown on her face. But she had tricked him before. And she remembered his front tag. And there was not too many people driving around with that front tag. We found it at a chicken place, restaurant. Car parked in the
at
back.
Hamptons, it was at Hamptons.
We arrested him at Hamptons.
Is that where your favorite guy went and I won't say his name, it starts with a G and ends with an Airy? Barry. Gad Barry. got involved with that and found, I guess, got the car and then TO'd it over to you and you took over from there. And so he actually confessed to 88 to you.
We talked about 88 cases that had his MO. 42 of those cases we were able to clear. 33 of them we were able to go to trial on grand juries, what have you.
33?
33. We had about 70 depositions and about 8 life terms and 1 or 2 death terms. But it got heavy. We just never done anything like that in Daytona before. I didn't even realize what I was getting myself into in the long run. But I hung on to it. I wouldn't let it go. Like a dog on your ankle. Oh, how hard you shake it, I was hanging on.
Well, we've had a few serial killers. Eileen Warnos, and what's funny is I was telling Steve this story, but no one ever mentions it. But it was one of my snitches that actually was blowing my pager up, telling me where she was. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, it was one of my snitches that was blowing my pager up on my day off. I'm standing out in the front yard with my kids, and my pager's getting blown up. I'm like, "Who's this?" And she's like, "She's here. She's here." I'm like, "Where?" And she was at the Crook's Den. We saw her. She said where she was going, to the last resort. So I'm getting on the horn, trying to get a hold of Nils. Can't get a hold of Nils. Finally got a hold of him, and then didn't hear another word. And I don't know if that's why they caught her, but I'm not sure, Chief. But that's a true story. We had that little task force going, but nothing crazy, because we just knew that she was in our area all the time. But I mean, that's one person. Did you ever get to talk to her?
No.
That's one person that I'm kind of on the fence on whether she should have been put to death on, because I truly think she was not right. I think we could have learned more from her by studying her.
Yeah.
I didn't feel right about putting her down, Chief. I really didn't.
It's totally opposite what we're familiar with.
What's that?
It's totally opposite type of case we're familiar with.
Right.
Some people said she was doing us a favor. You get different answers from different people. But there wasn't a lot of people really wrapped around that case.
Yeah. That was a crazy case. So you got 42 confirmed confessions, but 88 that we can all speculate on whether he actually did them or not. What do you believe? What do you believe down deep? Do you believe he did 88?
33 we were able to convict him. But
Probably more like 100.
but he told me he killed 6 to 8 a year since he got his driver's license.
He told you he killed six to 8 a year?
Right.
And I know we started talking about it. What was his motivation? Just pure hatred for women?
Hatred.
Was he a misogynistic guy? Is that what he was? Just a total misogynist?
From Pennsylvania to Gainesville. Who in the hell would go to Gainesville and find 2 young girls? And he brought that up. He remembered the girl had cowboy boots on. That's why he could catch her. There's 2 girls in the car. And as usual, the girl in the middle, he hit her and just right off the bat with a knife. The girl in the boots got out and started running away, and he caught up with her and brought her back. So,
because she had boots on and couldn't run.
Right. So he takes his car to Gainesville, gets the detail out, drives back to Pennsylvania, and goes to work the next morning. Like everything's normal. Different type of person. Thank God.
He's just motivated.
Yeah.
And his parents were good people, were they not?
Weren't bad. They moved around to a lot of cities. There was a question why. And I always they suspected he was a little too active. I know when he come to live with his grandparents in Norman, they put locks on their doors. You could see all this building up. Why?
On the bedroom doors?
On the bedroom doors. So it, like I said, the jobs, the number of jobs he had in such a short period of time, and cars he would go through, just just amazing
Yeah.
how he slipped through the system.
Now, what kind of deal did you make with him and the state attorney's office on our cases here, which was what, 5, right? In our,
Right.
was it 5 in Volusia?
He got 5 death penalties. And I told him once he got out of Volusia County, he was on his own.
You get 5
Yeah.
license.
And he,
Now, was it Foxman that said, I think I read some of the transcripts. Did Foxman say something to the effect that he believed that he should get the death penalty?
Right.
Was it Foxman? Is that right?
That's the only guy to work with.
Yeah. And he reluctantly let him make that deal
Right.
that you brokered for him with the state attorney's office, right?
Right. There was something there. There's more to it. How could we continue this without getting a negative? When we went, the 6th case was in Titusville. So he was open right there. They gave him the death penalty. That's the one they executed on.
That's the girl from Port Orange, though, right? Is that the one that was in Titusville? But he actually left our county, and he told you he committed the homicide there in Brevard.
Committed a homicide in Daytona Beach.
Oh, he did.
Sorry, Port Orange.
Port Orange.
Her purse was found in the garbage by the river. And it was just my experience from his other cases. They didn't live long after they got in the car. So she was dead on the arrival to
The dump site.
County.
So, but you didn't charge him with that case, right?
No, I made the case, and Brevard County did their own separate investigation at the same time, which was good. It supported what I found out. And Coco had this one subject they kept bringing back in the paper. He did it. Stano didn't do it. Well, as I explained to you before, rapists and murderers are different.
Right.
And he was arrested 3 times for rape. Finally, Dean Marksley investigated the case, and he was in jail at the time of the murder. So press can go crazy with bad information.
Right. That's so everyone listening, you're talking about a serial killer that is not your typical serial killer.
Right.
His MO, or he does have cases that are similar, but not all possess those same similarities.
I went to so many.
Sometimes he used a gun, sometimes he used a knife.
Yeah. I've had so many calls from other agencies. You remember the Green River case?
Yes, sir. Oh yeah, I just watched a big documentary on that one again.
Sheriff calling and trying to find out what else they could do. And I said, well, you need to find a live victim. And I threw him a curve. He said, what the hell's a live victim? I said, one that got away.
Exactly.
I mentioned to him, you have an academy there. He says, yeah. I said, I get all the senior kids, put them in civilian clothes, and put them in these hot spots with prostitutes are.
Yeah.
Have a card, get out of jail card, see what you can do. Will it work? When do y'all remember the guy? Remember the truck he was in?
Yeah.
So sometimes finding that live victim is a big deal. They're not that accurate. They get away. So,
Right.
The old things I say, you have to have opportunity and you have to have desire.
Yeah.
If you don't have one of those, you pass.
Means and opportunity.
Right.
And desire. Yep.
The Kansas City.
I often say that.
Chief Crow, can I ask you a question?
Chief Crow, this is one of my moderators. This is Rachel.
Hi,
And
Chief
she is a student of serial killers. So
All right.
go ahead.
I just wanted to know, did you work on the Gary Ray Bowles case?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Because it seems to me like
it
it seems to me that the way that Gary Ray Bowles grew up, he was like the male version of Eileen Wardos.
could be, just like the case we see in New York right now. When you see the guy's face, you say, oh my God, he's a serial killer.
Yeah, he's like 6'6" too.
Well,
Okay.
it's the they got a different look in their eyes. You can't explain it to somebody that's never seen it.
Right.
But
She
thank
was
you for
a-
answering my question. I was just wondering, since that case was in Daytona, I was just
Chief,
wondering, did they consult? That's all.
Chief
remember-
Rachel was a victim herself. She was carjacked, and then the guy that carjacked her went on to do what, 5 homicides, Rachel?
A home invasion, execution, 5 executions.
Yeah,
He,
and
he,
she was shot in the foot during that.
I have
well,
a lot of victims from Stano who escaped. Send me emails all the time. Talking about the case, how they got away, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's funny how there's some detectives that actually believe you when you tell them you got to catch this guy because he's going to do it again. And they asked me why I thought that, and I said because he liked it. I mean, you could tell he liked what he was doing.
He enjoyed it.
Yes.
Enjoyed it.
So do you feel like Stano really enjoyed it, Chief?
Right. When you look at 68 homicides a year, let's see what's
Right.
16. 16. The parents would move from city to city to city to city. You have to say they knew something. Something's wrong. Why they moved so much. But like you say, they were good people. They got
Right.
themselves in the corner.
When you were interviewing him, do you still have any video recordings of the interviews? Does that still exist, or?
They're in the court system. I have still my folder with what do you want to call it? The paperwork from each case, just about. I love that out to Kathy Kelly because it's so much to keep up with. She did that one book. We used to have a saying that I saw a girl walking. And that's how it started. Goes back to my old saying, motivation.
Right. He saw a girl walking.
Right. It has to have that opportunity. The Susan Seal case, I don't know if you remember that one. She was 12 years old in Port Orange. And that went unsolved for 4 or 5 years. And the kid actually got off the school bus going home. And Gerald picked her up. Gerald had gone to the skating ring in South Daytona. It was a
Right.
bar skating ring, and she was a pupil. He drove her up the Nova Road instead of turning right to go to the skating ring, and he turned left. And at the railroad track, which back then was nothing but woods, and wandered back there and
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
up there. And I went up there with a group of people, all buildings and pavement, nothing there you could really put your hands on.
Whose skull did they find on Primrose? Who was that?
Don't remember. Well, yeah.
A kid found a skull, if I
Right,
remember right.
She had a broken arm, cast on her arm, and she would work Ridgewood. And they found her there. And his brother lived 4 houses up the road from him. And when he got done, he drove in his brother's parking lot and went to sleep. He was so tired from the gun. So
The adrenaline pump, then the letdown.
one of the animals in the neighborhood brought the skull back up to the front yard and escalated from there.
Did he do any bludgeoning, or was it always just, upper torso? Did he do any damage to the cranium, or any head blows or anything like that, or was it always pretty much just?
Nothing like that. Gerald was a coward. He wouldn't fool around with any man or anybody who would want to put up a fight with him, argue. He would booger. He would not participate. He felt his masculinity, and he would kill. And, he would ruin a lot of families' dreams.
Well, you developed that rapport with him. So what do you feel like his true motivation was? Did he ever actually tell you, or was it just he just had disdain for women?
He had disdain for women, what he called bitchy women.
Bitchy women.
Started bitching at him, saying we need to go here and then to get there. It was a one-way street with it. You go where I want to go.
So he wanted a yes woman.
He wanted a submissive woman. He was a sadist.
Right. He was a sadist. Yeah. Rachel probably nailed it.
Yeah.
Gerard John Schaefer is the type of killer that scares me because there's so much torture involved.
Right.
That was one guy that really creeped me out because he was a cop. And you know, back in the 70s, everybody trusted the police. I mean, everybody did.
Well, when we did the Kansas City case, postal the chief, I said, don't you take him back. This turns out to be a cop. They turned out to be, worked with dog canine department in the police department.
Wow.
He had all the access to their radio dispatch and what have you. And he went through criminal justice school. It's big.
What Gerard John Schaefer did to his victims, really, that's scary.
Yeah. When he talked to the ones that survived, they caught on to him quick and they took off. Thank goodness. Only in the case in Gainesville did he get out of the car and chase somebody. That was a real trophy for him to have two at one time.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of a short, dumpy guy, wasn't he? He
Right.
wasn't.
One an athlete.
He liked to put a noose around their neck and stick them on mangrove roots where their toes were barely touching so they could watch each other's legs give out and watch each other die.
You know, Gerald wasn't an academic person, but he could take your car apart and put it back together.
His IQ was around 142.
Yeah. It was amazing what he can. I was driving down the road with him going back to start. He says, don't turn the air conditioner off when you're going this speed, you'll blow a condenser or something. I didn't know that. So,
Really? He had what did he have? A Gremlin or something? I can't remember. A Dodge Dart.
no,
He had a couple different vehicles, right?
the Dodge Dart sounds familiar.
And he was real anal about his car too, because I remember reading that he was pissed off because his car was getting messed up.
No. He drives to Jackson Line to detail it out. He's so upset with the blood on his front of the car.
And forensics back then, Chief, were just not even remotely like they are now. And that's what I try to tell people when I'm talking about some of these current cases. And even since I left, you know, you've got the Oculus and the 3D imaging and stuff like that. That's why I want to have Tom on one of these days. But it's just amazing what they can do now. I mean, it used to be, and we're talking about, I don't know how familiar you are with the Idaho 4 case, which is the case where the students were stabbed
Right.
by a guy that went in there with a K-bar knife and stabbed them. If you're not, look into it because you'll find it very intriguing. Look at some of my stuff. They've got a guy based on, you know, some DNA on the snap of a knife sheath that he left on the scene. And you know, it's just amazing. You know, they've torn the house down because it's near the university, and the university doesn't want the house. But what I'm trying to explain to the people is they've already gutted the house. The house is just an empty shell, and people are all in arms about tearing this house down. And I'm telling them, look, they've got 3D imaging, and it's better than actually going to the crime scene, because nowadays, if you've got a juror that wants to know what happened in this area of the house, they can go to it at any time while they're deliberating and look at it again. And it's just amazing what technology has brought to us today when it comes to crime scenes. You don't even need to go to crime scenes anymore.
Well, crime scenes is something that used to really frustrate me. Everybody hated to see me show up. And I was such a stickler. They'd say, who in the hell puts a cigarette in the garden, the toilet? And I looked at him and said, well, it was me. Okay, so he goes, I used to use the analogy that the crime scene gets destroyed when the first officer arrives. And people get pissed about that. I said, well, think about it. Our tracks, footprints, et cetera, contaminated. Hated it. Hated that. Everybody used to get frustrated with my strictness, crime scenes.
It makes you really appreciate these guys that went out and hunted these killers way before all of this technology. It had to take a toll on your life.
Well, that's why I wanted his wife and his son there to talk about the actual effects it had on the dynamic of the family, and they testified that it was hard. It was all consuming for. I mean, I know you talked to him for 6 years, Chief, but how much of that time do you estimate that you were actually deep enthralled and before the first conviction? I mean, how much time are we talking about here?
1980 to 86.
So 6 years. I mean, it was a big, huge part of your life, the whole family's life. I mean, that's when I was hired in '86.
I remember the Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris case where they were riding around in that van and picking up teenage girls and torturing them. I know the lead detective on that case, he ended up committing suicide. He was one of those men that are opposite of a misogynist. He was a misogynist in a good way. He felt like women should all be protected, and
Right.
it really took a toll on him
Yeah. He
because
got-
they had an audio recording of the last girl that they had tortured, and they played it in court, and it was horrible.
Yeah. We had some cases. I know we're not going to talk about that. The Photopoulos case, that was a crazy case, but I was there for that.
Case. Slam dunk. Bad guy came into the room, husband's in the bed, the wife's in the other bed. He passes by the husband, 6'3", so forth, shoots the wife in the head with his 22, comes out of the room, passes by the husband again. He's got 5 guns under his bed. He goes out in the hall and leaves and tries to get out a window, which has been locked from the outside. He couldn't get out. Husband came out of the bedroom and shot him in the back. So
Yeah, really?
that wasn't a big deal. Due to who they were made it a big deal. He screwed up big time.
Yeah, Rachel, we might cover that case one of these days. It's a very, very it's a crazy case. And it came about kind of by accident, didn't it, Chief?
No, I don't know what you mean by accident.
Well, how we actually came across, the murder for hire and all that stuff, and what was.
And they were originally going to kill her at Brazzers.
Yep. During Halloween.
Yep, that failed. So they went back to Plan B and they shot him. So if they hadn't made that video of that one kid they shot in the chest, wouldn't have
That's
been.
it.
But that was sad to listen to him watch.
That's what I'm talking about. That kind of by accident we kind of figured it, because he was trying to get in Soldier of Fortune.
Right.
Yeah.
We found 10 grand in his car, all phony bills.
Really? I don't
Yep.
remember that. I don't remember
Shows
that.
how good these people are.
Oh yeah, I do remember that too. I do remember that now.
The guy went through all $10,000. He says, I know where all these came from this one guy. I've never seen this guy before. They were pretty sharp.
This guy Rachel ran a he had a place on the boardwalk, the Daytona Beach boardwalk. And all of us cops at one point kind of encountered him. And it turns out he was a really bad guy, and he's on death row. And so is his accomplice. Well, she got off. Deidre got off, right? So she's got life now. So she got off death row, didn't she?
Right. You remember the Stina case at the Mexican restaurant on Bethel Road in Live March? Taco
Yeah.
Bell?
Yeah.
That was a sad case. They ran out of ammunition, so they went to the car and got a hunting knife and stabbed the rest of them to death. And those 2 guys were 17 years old.
You talking about the Taco Bell case?
Yep.
Yeah. That was a sad case. I was a rookie then. I remember that case. every time I drive by that Taco Bell, that's right there by your house too. So you got to drive by it all the time. But yeah, every time I drive by, I often wonder why Taco Bell just didn't tear that place down. It's just, I don't know, just a horrible event to have happen there, and they keep
They
it
had
up.
just opened, that Taco Bell had just opened a few weeks before that happened. It was a brand
Wow.
new. Oh,
Yeah, that was a senseless. That was one of the most senseless ones I think I ever. I didn't encounter that one, but I was on the department then. But I wasn't in CID.
They were 17 years old and the argument went on forever about it.
Yeah, it's sad. Well, sir, I'm gonna let you guys get. I really appreciate you and Miss Crow and Steve for coming on. You have no idea how much I admire you, Chief Crow, and I will always hold a special part in my heart for you. You gave me a chance, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Appreciate
And,
that.
I was always proud to work for you, and knowing that you've done so much, and the haters out there are gonna hate because, of course, you do a high profile case like that, they come after you.
Yeah.
There's people out there saying some false things tonight, and they, you were exonerated of everything. Nothing happened to you. You retired, and their little witch hunt was nothing. And I was so furious when I heard that was going on, because it was senseless.
It goes back to my history. I love to help people.
Exactly.
When somebody says I'm going to kill myself 3 times on the phone with another, you tend to get involved a little bit. He's going to kill himself. Why not put him in the hospital, see if you can't help him?
Right. And we know the politics involved in all that stuff, Chief.
Yeah.
We know what was going on, but Chief Crow retired after 32 years, and I thought it was 31, but it's 32, I believe now, right? And he had a very colorful career, and I'm proud to say that I wore a badge under him, and there's not a day that goes by that I would ever say that I regret any of my time there. I appreciate everything that you've done for the community, and you have a story to tell, and I hope you'll come back sometime. If you think of anything, well, actually, real quick, Danny Rawlings and Ted Bundy, any of that stuff, because I know you were in contact with all the investigators on those cases as well.
Henry Robbins sad, but take the head off and put them on their remote record system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty horrific.
His dad was a lieutenant in Orleans PD.
Yeah, I'd heard that. We
Didn't have both horses.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's there's some stories to be told out there, sir. And I can remember when we were looking in the woods by the mall. What was that kid's name that they had, that they thought did the Gainesville murders at first? What was that kid? He had a scar on his face.
Yeah.
Remember?
Chief of police there came down with a whole bunch of detectives and going through the wooded areas, trying to find this, trying to find that.
Yeah, we're over by our mall. Because what was that kid's name? Humphreys. Wasn't his last name Humphreys?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, and he got exonerated, but that poor guy went through hell.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But there seems to always there seems to be a lot of connections with Daytona and a lot of crime, and that's why I try to tell people that don't understand the dynamic of our city. They don't know.
We had 6 profiles, 6 serial killers. Lucas and Toole lived on Loomis Avenue in Daytona. They confessed to over hundreds of cases in Texas. But they lived here. A race car driver lived here. We found him. Sad, sick people.
And then we had Lenny D and Richard Franklin.
Yep.
Boy, I tell you what, we had a duel, 2 brothers. They killed a guy named Gregory Roper. And you know that case, Chief, that case was not my case, but I went back out to the wooded area and I canvassed the wooded area and I found a beer can that was discarded and I tagged it and it had their latents on it.
That's great. They got so many tools that they could do with now. It's just not the same ballgame.
Right.
We used to have to work so damn hard, and we had to be repetitive. That's when people started making up their minds, but we couldn't help it. We didn't have the DNA to do it.
Right. Well, are you ready to go? Because some people might have some questions they want to ask. You want to field some questions? Or you guys pretty spent?
If you have to, I'm pretty spent.
Well, let's do this again another time because you've been on a long time, and I think people will get a real grasp of who you are when you come back and you field some questions, and we'll give people an opportunity to kind of absorb what we've been talking about and maybe think about some questions that they may have. Because if I do that now, we'd probably be sitting here for 3 or 4 hours. And I'd love to, but I know you're probably tired. And I really want to say I appreciate you so much. Miss Crow, thank you so much for allowing your husband to shine one more time on basically on TV, sort of.
Yeah, I've always been very proud of him. So.
Well, you should be, and Chief Crow, you should be. You have a beautiful wife, and she's always been there. You guys have been in that house for probably 40 years, haven't you? That same house.
Close.
Yeah, got that.
Yeah.
We have added on. How that goes.
Everything's getting to the point where it has to be replaced now. So that's
what
we're doing now.
Yeah, I bought a house out in Quiet Place in the country, and it's the old, the Pelican Bay houses. It's the big house in Pelican Bay. It's the only one out here like that. It's the one that has the beams going down by the front door. Same builder built that out here. And actually, this house, you probably know this case. The guy that built this house with his brother, Sean McGuire, sold me this house. Told me that the guy that used to live out here was a major coke dealer, and there's holes still cut with receivers in the wall, and like where they had AC receivers, there's hollow, and you could see that where they put the kilos jammed into the insulation. And Sean told me, and the guy bailed. His brother was a contractor, and this guy bailed and went to Colombia, and then married a lady in Colombia, and stayed down there till statute of limitations ran out, and then he came back. He was circling my house one day, and I went out there. I was getting kind of concerned, and he told me, no, I built this house with my brother, and I brought him in and showed him we were gutting it and redoing it. And I said, hey man, I don't care what you did. I said, you know, we're in Colombia. You're a pilot. He was a pilot. I don't know if that rings any bells. But I said, I know what you were doing, man. And I brought him into this room right here, and I showed him. I started laughing. I said, what was that for? He goes, man, that was a long time ago.
We've had some characters, no doubt about it.
Yes, sir. But I'll let you go, and I appreciate you guys, and we'll do it again. There's going to be a lot of questions that come in, and if you think of anything that you want to talk about,
I'm
Chief,
always,
I'll give you the floor anytime.
okay. Thank you, sir.
Anytime. Bye, y'all. God bless.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you. Well, I tell y'all, that was for me personally, that was very rewarding, because if you guys knew anything about doing just good old police work and putting your nose to the grindstone and just getting it done, those were the days, and that was the man to get it done. And I tell you, I personally have all the respect in the world for Paul Crow. Diane, whatever you have going on, you need to I have to mute Diane, I have to mute you because I think you've got both StreamYard and the link up, so get out of one of them.
I mean, I'd muted myself. Okay.
All right, well, I got you back now. Hold on a second.
I just wanted to tell him, because I knew that they couldn't read chat, how many people were really impressed and were like, "Can he come back? Can he come back?" And how awesome it was. It was fascinating to listen to him talk about all that stuff.
Well, I wish we had a little bit of a sound issue, so I hope everybody was understanding him. Was kind of cutting in and out there for a while, but I tell you, he's just a wealth of information. And you hear me talk about these current cases today, and what concerns me, and I should have asked him about this, because what concerns me about cases today is we become so CSI oriented, and I did that show, the CSI Effect, that
if there's no DNA, nobody wants to try it.
right, that we're actually forgetting how to do just good old police work, and getting that circumstantial evidence, and getting all of the statements we need, because we count so much on forensics and DNA today, that what concerns me about the future moving forward for investigations is, if we don't have DNA in a homicide case, people are going to walk, because it seems like that's what they have to have today. And it really is concerning, especially now if you get a juror that's my age, or maybe in their 60s or even their late 40s. You may not encounter that, but my kids, when they get on a jury pool, they're going to expect to see DNA. Well, why is there no DNA? No DNA. I can't convict this guy without any DNA. I can't send this guy to the death penalty. I can't sign off on that, because all the circumstantial evidence is there. I believe he did it, but am I going to sign off on a DP case and vote for the death penalty if I'm just not 100,000% sure that he did it, but I got enough to convict him, but I just don't have enough to sentence him to death?
Well, look at the people who, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, look at the people who, because there's no DNA in Koberger's car, then it can't be him. Just that one piece of information, right. They're like, it's no DNA, it couldn't be him. And that's totally not.
Yeah. If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. And that was just a glove back in those days. Now,
hey, want to know the one? I wasn't going to ask then, but the thing that fascinates me is this guy spent 6 years basically with that guy, and he said, we'd be driving down the road, and he would be like, "No, take a right," and I'm like, are you kidding me? You're just like riding down the road with this guy that you know killed 33 women and not more, and you're just driving down the road with him. I mean, I'm thinking interrogation in a box, but apparently
Well,
that's not how that worked.
he didn't drop his guard. Don't get me wrong. And he
No,
was
I know that,
shackled and he was, but he was, he had this way about him. You saw how soft spoken he was.
oh yeah,
He's not that typical interrogator that would sit down and get in your face or rub knees up against you and pound his fist on the desk. He took a totally different route, and I tried to kind of mold myself after that. I couldn't do it.
I have a friend who
I couldn't be that calm all the time.
great.
I would get to the point where I was like, and you heard him say, never ask a question that you didn't know the answer to.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And that is so true in investigations. And I got to the point where when I sat down and I did an interrogation, I'd be like, look, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and I already know the answers to them. So this is your one and only chance to come clean. I'm going to give you this chance, and, I'll help you any way I can, but I know the answers to these questions. And a lot of times I didn't know the answers to the questions, but it's all on how you sell it. And I got a lot of confessions.
Convince the guy who's killed all these people and knows he has, that he can just talk to him openly and freely. It's just fascinating. I have a friend who is he's a retired detective, but he was a school resource officer, but he also all kinds of stuff. He was a cop first, and he was an amazing investigator. Like, I don't want to say interrogator because that makes it sound like it's in your face, but that sort of thing. And he could get kids to admit to stuff that nobody else in the world could have gotten them to say, yeah, I did that. It's
Right.
it's a skill. It's an amazing skill. And if they stop teaching stuff like that, not that that's also born into you, I believe, your personality, but
Thank you, Bogey
just
Greenstreet. Thank you so
training
much.
people to do old school police work, they're going to have a hard time just because with just DNA and forensics. Okay, I don't want to talk too long.
No, you can stay. You can stay on, Diane. Hey, I'm going to post the link, y'all. If anybody wants to come on, Rachel, if you want to come back on, J Lord, Stacy, if you want to come on, anybody that wants to come on, or anybody in the audience, if you want to come on and just talk about, whatever surrounding. People were kind of making fun of the fact that I wanted to do this show. Oh, this happened back in the 70s and 80s. Who cares? No, it's relevant. I mean, how often do you get to sit down and actually talk to an investigator that arguably extracted the confessions out of 88 homicides out of a person? Now, again, we could never prove some of them. He could never prove them, but that's the kind of rapport that he had with him. These NP, want to come after, the investigators of these cases and say, oh, well, he was coerced, he was this, he was a serial confessor and all this crap. No, because Chief Crow would never feed anybody anything. He would be going down the road saying, hey, where are we going? And he would purposefully take a wrong turn, and Stano would correct him. Those are the types of things that good investigators do, because you want to make sure that you're being told the truth.
Well, he had to find out. I know this sounds weird, but he had to find out some things about Stano that he had in common, or that he liked, or something. You can't sit there with somebody. I don't know. I couldn't. I couldn't be a cop anyway. But that's another story. It's fascinating.
Well, it is fascinating, and there's a lot of things that that I wanted to ask him and wanted to delve into. But look at Paul Crow. He's 80 years old. Now, let me tell you something about that man. He used to have arms about this big. He probably still does. I couldn't see him, but he had guns. He had arms like this big. He was a big boy. Not super tall. He's my height. I'm 5'10". I think he was around my height, but just a big guy. And
Big, strong shoulders and big hands.
oh man, he you heard him mention
Real strong.
you heard him mention Jim Beck and Ron Beck, and there's a guy named Roger Vaughn. And if Chief Crow's still listening, Roger Vaughn is still alive, and he talked about the hours that we used to have to work, and he's not exaggerating. I mean, I can remember standing on Main Street during Bike Week, and it's like you never know what you're going to get during Bike Week. It could be beautiful and in the mid to upper 70s, low 80s, or it could be 32 degrees. You just never know from year to year what you're going to get, and it could be rainy. It was one of those 32 degrees, 33 degrees sleet, about the snow cold. And we're down there, and people come for Bike Week. They're spending money. They're not going to stay in their hotel rooms. They're coming out. I mean, we would work. I can remember going home, laying my head down for 3 hours, getting back up, changing my clothes, and going right back just to get 3 hours of sleep. And he wasn't exaggerating when we'd pull like 20-hour shifts. And Roger Vaughn he talked about motors. I mean, I remember he was so tired that he rolled off the sidewalk and set up the traffic light, and he was so tired that he didn't put his foot down, and the bike fell over.
Seen it.
So other guys tell this story, but I saw it firsthand. And when it fell over, now imagine it's a big full dresser Harley. He stood up. Roger Vaughn's like in motor boots. He's like 6'6". He was a big boy and had arms like this, straps up to his ears. Just natural guy too. No steroids. This dude was just a monster. He still is, and he's 80-something years old. People were laughing that saw it happen because cop dumps his bike.
It's kind of funny.
He reaches over from the other side of the bike and grabs it and goes boom, and he picks that thing up, lifts the front end up, and pops that thing up with one arm, straddles it, and takes off. And people are like,
yeah, nobody's laughing then.
I mean, those are the type of guys that I enjoy telling stories about. And Paul Crow is one of those guys. And it was the good old boys back then. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's just the way it was, and things were different. I'm not saying that everything everybody did back in the day was right, but this is reality. And
well, he didn't have a problem with. I mean, he could pick up every name. Like you said a name, and he knew. I mean, he's quick. He remembered everything.
Hey, y'all, Tanner is working on the membership with me, but if y'all remember early on, I was doing shows and I had the Smiths as part of my music. So for some reason, those were never monetized because I had the Smiths in there, and I didn't really care because I wasn't monetized then anyway. And I've got he's going in and he has to edit those all out apparently before I can start doing memberships. So we're working on that now. I think he actually got a lot of it done, if not all of it done. So we'll see what happens when we can get some memberships out there for everyone. But back to Chief Crow. I mean, again, if you're listening, Chief and Steve and Miss Crow, thank you so much. I was honored to have you on. And, I told Steve, his son, who's an attorney, that, I wanted to take this opportunity to give back, because although it's little, he's been retired since 1987 or 1997. And, I wanted him to shine once again. And, if it could brighten their day, and look at Miss Crow. She's a beautiful lady, still beautiful lady. And supported him. And, you know, back then, like you say, he made $95 a week, y'all. Under $400 a month, not counting taxes. So, and they had a family to raise, and it's a thankless job. You know, from the time that I started my own show, and people, even when I was on the other show, from the time that I had, you know, announced that I was a cop, I got hate right away. It was like people, you heard me telling the story, it was like people just loved to come on and just mess with me. And they still are to this day. And it's just ridiculous. You know,
Well, if that doesn't prove it, ain't nothing gonna prove it.
yeah, people are still to this day saying I was never a cop. They'll say it after this show. They'll say, "Oh, he was never." They'll say it right after I had the chief, or they'll start slandering him. I'm sorry, Rachel, are you on? Rach,
Yeah.
you're muted. Hey,
I am muted.
there you go. What's going on? What do you think?
I was just, since he was from Daytona, I was just really curious if they consulted with him about Gary Ray Bowles. You know, I watched this thing on Gary Ray Bowles, and he and Eileen Warnos pretty much had the same childhood shit going on.
Yeah, but Gary Bowles was he was in the mid 90s, wasn't he? If I remember right.
I can't remember. He's been in prison so long, and I'm getting
Yeah,
so
he was
old.
in the mid, and Chief Crow was already on his way into retirement, and he was in an admin position then. He wasn't in CID anymore.
Oh,
He
okay.
said he
Because
didn't
you know,
know that name.
even
He
though
didn't know.
people retire, they still consult sometimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know,
No.
that's the
And
reason
he,
why I asked him, because you know they didn't. It Gary Ray Bowles was something else.
yeah,
He,
he
he
was
said,
horrible.
well, he said the first time he killed somebody, went. He remembered. He sat down. The guy invited him over, and he sat down and he said, "There's a VHS tape if you want to watch it." And see, Gary Ray Bowles was a straight man, but when he left home when he was 13, he had to turn tricks with men to be able to make a living because he didn't know any other way because he was a baby.
Right.
So sometimes he would have these PTSD flashbacks of being abused before he was 13, and whatever trick he was with ended up dead. And that's what he said it was. He said even though he was with those men, he was disgusted by them.
Why didn't he pick women? I mean, that's a legit question.
Well, because all the abuse came from men. He had hatred towards men, gay men,
Well, he had to make money too.
pedophiles.
He was in it for the money, Diane.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he was turning tricks.
You got to pay the women. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but he's the prostitute.
Right, I gotcha.
So, I mean, I just thought it was. I wish I had more time with him. You know,
I hope he'll come back.
We'll bring him back again, and we'll have, you know, he's got a good idea of how everything works now. But I wanted to get that. I thought it was important that we humanize the career of an investigator. His family suffered.
Okay, his wife must have been terrified.
She
I would
was.
have been.
She was. But you know, if you saw Paul Crow, I mean, if you saw him now, probably without a shirt on, you'd be impressed. But I mean, the man was a big man. He was like I said, I got decent sized arms, but his arms were as big as my quads. He's a big boy.
He probably wasn't the first guy that a guy would pick a fight with in a bar.
No, no, he wasn't for sure. And when you heard him talk about Bike Week and the Outlaws, and there's a lot of things about this city that people don't know. You had the Outlaws motorcycle gang here. We did a huge search warrant on them across from they had a clubhouse close to the Boot Hill Saloon on Main Street, which is a world famous bar, the Boot Hill Saloon. In fact, the cemetery across the street, a little history, there's a cemetery across the street. Have you ever heard the term the real McCoy?
Mm-hmm.
The real McCoy was about two rum runner brothers that used to run rum up the coast, and they lived here in the Daytona area. And the reason why they got the name the real McCoy was because they refused to water down their rum. So when they got it to New York, it was good rum, so they started calling it the real McCoy. One of those brothers is buried in the cemetery right across from the Boot Hill Saloon. Just a little history for everyone. Kind of a crazy thing. A lot of people don't know what the real McCoy came from. But the Boot Hill Saloon is here. The cemetery's here, and the clubhouse for the Outlaws was right here. And it's no longer there anymore. It got torn down. But we're talking about bad people, y'all. I mean, very, very bad. There's open homicides all over the place from that motorcycle gang. Bodies that have never been found. So we've had it all here, and I'll tell you, I wouldn't trade anything for the world for the, from what I've learned and the diversity that I've attained in my life, because I'm a diverse person. I can hang with the homies. I can hang with the rednecks. I can hang with the surfers. I can hang with just about anybody. I can switch like that. And that's because of where I was brought up.
Hey, I'm telling you, Florida's something else. There's a lot of places to lose a body in Florida. I mean, a
lot of
lot.
There is. Where he was talking about, the Tomoka State Park, where two of the victims were found.
Uh-huh.
The Tomoka State Park, if you guys remember the old Tarzan movies, Johnny Weissmuller days back in the 50s, there you'll see a scene where he's actually swinging from a vine out into a river, and there's palm trees going out of the water like this. That was actually filmed in the Tomoka River. Now, a lot of it was filmed in California, but that part was filmed in Tomoka River. Some of those scenes, and those are where some of the Seminole Indian tribe, had Indian burial grounds all in there, and they've got a big monument in there. But it's right on the Tomoka River, which comes off of the Intercoastal, and back in there is where a lot of people. In fact, the book that I've been writing for 20 years and I need to finish is about a serial killer, and a lot of the book is based in part of that area back there in the woods where kids used to go party, and it surrounds a witch and a story about a witch, and it's pretty cool. But there's a lot of history and a lot of crazy things have happened here, and
just think how many famous serial killers have been through Florida's death row.
Yeah. Just think about
the most prolific too. I'm talking about they're ranked up there.
Well, Ted Bundy and Gerald Stano were on death row together.
Yeah, and Ted Bundy and Gerard John Schaefer was on death row at the same time. He used to tease Bundy all the time. He said he used to tease Bundy all the time. Bundy would always ask him, "How many did you really get?" And he said he would look at Ted and go, "Ted, I'm the best." I mean, these guys are sick for real.
And when you had you remember Chief Crow saying that there's a case, was it New Jersey or Pennsylvania? I can't remember where he said, but there was a case up there where those two were occupying the same area at the same time. What was it?
Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. And so they didn't know who did it. I think it turned out to be one of Bundy's, but
did that man say Bundy's wife called him? I swear he did. I think
Chief Crow?
Oh,
Bundy's wife.
That's what I thought he said, but I don't know what he said.
I don't think Bundy had a wife, did
I
he?
didn't think either. She wouldn't have lasted long. I don't
No,
know.
no.
Somebody's
But
wife called him.
oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. One of the yeah, I know who you're talking about. No, it wasn't
Anyway,
Bundy.
that's not important.
But there's a lot to be learned from guys like that, because they don't make them like that anymore. Jailer says she's got a Boot Hill t-shirt. Stacy, you need to come on in here, chat with us, tell us what you think.
I tell you, John, I would pay a lot of money to sit in a room with the beer and listen to you guys talk, just you and the chief. Have
Oh,
a
you think I'm nothing?
Like at a
Some of those
dinner
guys that
table.
he was mentioning, like John Powers, they call him JP. They called me JP too, but some of the guys that he talked about are legends.
I'd
I
love
mean,
to hear. I'd love to sit there
you
and
hear,
listen in.
back in the day, if you had a transient come through Daytona that was getting to be a pain in the butt, I would hear stories. John, we wouldn't. This guy Dick Atkins told me a story. He was the greatest guy you ever meet. Super nice. He says we wouldn't tolerate that stuff back in the day. We just put him in a car and drive him up to the Flagler line, kick him out of the car, and tell him he better not come back or he was going to jail. You can't do that anymore. It was like the good old, walking tall days where you just kind of get out of my town. That stuff doesn't happen anymore. No, I'm not saying that it should.
Think about all the cops that drove somebody that they went to high school with home after a drunken stupor so they wouldn't drive instead of putting them in jail. They can't do that anymore.
You heard Chief Crow talking about how he was concerned about somebody that was going to commit suicide.
Yeah.
Well, that person got a DUI, and a bunch of calls were made, and long story short, a supervisor tried to cut him loose, and the department went under investigation for it because it was like favoritism or something, and they tried to indict a bunch of people, and he's the chief, so he's got to take the the bullet for it. And well, everything, there was nothing to it, and he was never found guilty of anything, and they tried to crucify several people for trying to do somebody that was going to commit suicide, to keep him from committing suicide because he got a DUI. And Chief Crow had nothing to do with it. He's just he was the chief. So some people wound up resigning over that, and it was not a good time. But you have some people getting on here tonight.
I turned him out for 24 hours every single time that idiot, whatever he
Oh, you know who that was. I know who that was. It was Stevie. We know it was Stevie. I know it was Stevie. I've got the IP.
Changed his name 100 times, so I spent the first half going.
He came up with like 5 different names and cut and pasting the same one. That's his MO. So Stevie, you're a dick.
Yep.
Period. You have no conscience. You are a morally pathetic human being. And I tell you, if I had you here right now, I won't even say what I'd do to you, but it wouldn't be good.
Would it be fight?
Yeah, it'd be Haymaker City, because what he was doing was absolutely pathetic.
He was ridiculous. I started with 5 minutes, and then every time he changed his name, I just went 24 hours, and then you got him at the same time.
I must have missed all that.
Yeah, it was early on. He actually did it. He started doing it when I posted the thumbnail yesterday. And then he created another name, and create another name, and create another name, and create another name.
How awful does your life? I wanted to cuss real bad, and I had to, I'm sorry.
He's a meth addict.
That's why I stuttered, because I didn't want to say the F word, really.
He's a meth addict.
How bad does your life have to be that you're doing this so obsessively?
Yeah.
It's
Pretty bad.
That's ridiculous.
He's just pissed off because he got called out
Who
and
when did he get
exposed
called out?
for doing what he did to
Jeff.
Jeff. He got nailed. Jeff and I handed him his ass with evidence because he thinks he's smarter than everybody else, and he's not.
No, he's not.
So he got his ass handed to him once again.
He reminds me of the kid that thinks he's being sneaky, not realizing that his parents did the same sneaky shit when he was that age.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. He needed a better hobby than to kick him off.
Here's what we have on this show, everyone. I mean, we have class, but they don't. We have our subscribers. I would like to see the demographic and where they came from and what their education is. And, we're not that trash that these other shows are.
None of us have ever been in jail, right?
Some of this most recent stuff. What did I say about those 3 football fans that were frozen to death in the backyard? What did I say it was going to be?
Drugs.
I said it was going to be fentanyl.
Yep.
I said, why are we paying this much attention? Why are we paying this much attention to that case when people are dying every day of fentanyl? Every single day. But you know what? They want to spin it into this nefarious homicide
that the cops didn't do a good job on.
I really do believe that they thought they were doing coke though and ran them a rail, and it was probably fentanyl.
Oh no, I believe that 100%. And here's another thing.
They cut out their lines. All of them takes a rail, walks outside to smoke a cigarette, and they don't ever come back in.
So what does cutting those lines mean? That means that those wallets sitting on the counter were because they pulled the credit cards out and they cut the lines, or they rolled up their dollar bills and they each did a bump, and they went outside. Because what happens to you when you OD on coke? What happens to your body, Rachel?
You go into cadaveric spasm.
Before that, while you're still awake, what happens to your body temperature?
Oh, you overheat.
You overheat.
Yeah, you overheat.
Substantially overheat.
It happens with meth too.
Meth too. So that would explain going outside without jackets on. It would explain a lot of things. They need to cool off because they are overheating. They were probably dying and they knew it.
Well, with speedy drugs, you overheat, and with stuff like opiates, warm you up, but they.
And I believe that the other guy probably did it, just didn't do as much, and he passed out for 2 days.
48 hours, yeah. Even I don't sleep for 48 hours, and I've got.
This happens. Everybody out there knows that this is happening every day in America. Every single day. So why are we paying so much attention to this case? Well, because they're in the backyard.
There was a case. There was a case where these 5 kids split 2 blues. Those little blue pills that look like Roxy's, but they're not really Roxy's.
Yeah.
They're fentanyl. Yep. Okay. Those 30 milligram pills. There was 5 kids, and they all quartered those 2 pills up and took like a quarter pill each, maybe a little more. But there was only 1 kid that got the part of the pill that had all of the fentanyl in it.
And that's the way. That's the way it is.
They said he had enough fentanyl in him to kill 10 people. And it's happening to these kids because they don't know the difference between these pills. They don't know how to spot fake pills because they've never seen real ones.
Well, they're probably made to look really similar.
And there's another thing. If you go on Alibaba and look up activist labels, you can buy activist labels for that cough syrup that they like drinking so much.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy a whole roll of those activist labels and make counterfeit cough syrup. And
talk about codeine?
Yes. Yeah, there's going to be a whole lot more kids dying.
Yep.
here pretty soon. So,
We better do something about this border.
well, you know, a lot of these kids they get into that opiate addiction first by sipping cough syrup. So, you know, you take some counterfeit cough syrup that's been made with like a benzodiazepine and fentanyl instead of it
Right.
actually being codeine, you're going to have yourself a big problem with overdoses. It's coming.
It's a sad day today. You know, you don't when you can't even smoke weed without worrying about what's in the weed today. I mean, you know, talking about weed, a lot of people don't get it. Tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. And I forget the percentages now. I used to know it by heart. But when I'm almost 56 years old, when I was a kid, they crushed up the leaf. They smoked the leaf. You were lucky if you got bud. Nowadays, that shit gets that's fertilizer. The sensimilla plants today are 12 foot tall, 14 foot tall. The elbows, which is the bud, it's called an elbow. So from your elbow to your fingertips is how big some of these buds are on these hydroponically grown plants. I went to DEA school in Miami, and we went to a house. We're doing surveillance on this house, and we flew over the house first in a helicopter. And this house was a mansion. It was freaking, it was huge, humongous mansion on the river. A terracotta roof. I mean, it was a $5 million house. The back of it had a detached garage with two of those huge generators, like you would see for a huge store that ran on diesel. We found out later that the dealer was paying two guys to run those generators $1,000 a week just to run those generators, so that he didn't have to use electricity because we would monitor the electric bills. Because on a hydroponic grow house, you have to maintain a certain temperature. You got all kinds of stuff that takes energy. So you look for that crazy, obscene electric bill. So this guy was smart. He got two generators, and he was running the whole house on generators. But what he wasn't
Crazy, insane water bill too, John.
right, exactly. So what it wasn't counting on was the fact that we fly over the houses and look for hot spots in the roof. So when you light that house up, the infrared, you'll see hot spots. So, you know, in the summertime, you shouldn't be having hot spots coming from the inside of the house. So basically that would tell us. And then you fly over and you got all those, you know, when you buy a plant, it's in that black pot that you buy from Home Depot or whatever. He had stacks and stacks of stacks for 500 feet to the river in his backyard that was fenced in. You couldn't see it from the road, but when you do a flyover, you see that stuff. Anyway, long story short, we get into the house on a search warrant. Any non-load bearing walls, he had totally knocked down. The whole house was a grow house. Upstairs, downstairs, every room. He had Cubans and Mexicans sleeping underneath the stairwells. That's where they slept, and they were running that hydroponic lab. Those plants were 14 feet high. One of those buds, one of those sensimilla buds, the elbows, $55 a piece. This was back in the mid-90s.
Yeah, that was back in the days when most people could only get that brick weed from Mexico. When you
Right.
had that lab grown fire like that, you could pretty much name your price.
He had PVC pipe run, and he had a whole hydroponic system set up in that $5 million house. Gutted it, and if you saw it from the outside, you'd think nothing of it. Nothing. 2 cars parked out front, nothing abnormal. But that was called Blue Lightning School. It was a DEA school, and we actually went out on the boats and on the on the go fast boats. That was an amazing school, a lot of fun. But back then, look how sophisticated it was. Now think about how sophisticated it is, and people are getting killed over weed. Why are people getting killed over weed? That's the question I want to ask. Why are people dying over weed today? I'll tell you why. Because this weed is not normal weed. It's weed that's laced. There's a lot that's going into this weed today. You do not know what you're smoking, people. You have no idea. You better be careful. You better be careful.
Well,
I'm
that's
telling you
why
right now.
that's why the government should let somebody grow at least four plants every month.
Yeah, what the hell? Who
I mean,
cares?
if you're growing your own, you know what's going in it. And there's people that need it. I mean, there's people with cerebral
There
palsy
is.
and cancer.
Absolutely.
And there's people that absolutely need it, and it works better than some of the drugs that they're on.
You know what's funny is that you heard me talk not long ago about the pain I was having in my back, and I won't take pills. I won't take any of that crap. And I was shopping. It was a couple years ago now, and it was one of those little head shops that sells the liquid THC. It's not THC.
Delta 8 or some other crap.
Whatever it is. So I'm like, my son, then he was like 13. He says, Dad, maybe you should try it. And a buddy of mine that was a retired cop said, John, you need to get some of that. I'm telling you. I'm like, no way, man. There's no way. I'm not doing it. I know it's legal. I'm not doing it. It wasn't THC. It was the liquid drops, and it tasted like freaking dirt. Horrible shit. But I dripped that stuff under my tongue. And Rachel and Diane, I'm not kidding you. Within 10 minutes, I was pain free. So I went in immediately and I bought a bottle of it. It was like $105 or something. I walk out, and that whole transaction took like 15 minutes, and then the pain was back like that. It came back within 15 minutes. So basically, it works. But I would have to freaking drink that bottle all day long, to get the effects of one.
Yeah, but
stupid
if it would have had THC in it on top of the CBN and the
CB oil, that's what it was.
The CBN and CBD.
CBD.
If it would have had THC in it too, that no pain feeling would have lasted you probably 2 hours instead of 15 minutes.
Yeah, I was when I was in Utah. I went through Colorado.
You got the unleaded. You have to get the leaded, John.
I should have tried. I should have tried one of those gummies. Somebody offered me one, and I wouldn't do it because I didn't want to be out there and never try anything like that. I've gone, guys. I don't look down on anybody that has. So I don't want anybody to think. I've never even tried weed my whole life. I've never smoked a cigarette my whole life. Never tried either or. I don't drink. I don't do any of that stuff because I just have never needed it. So I know people need it, and I know people run from stuff sometimes to get that feeling. Rachel, I know you need it because of your pain. People need it. It's the people that abuse it that piss me off.
Well, the thing about it is you won't find another drug on the market whatsoever that's not going to have some kind of side effects.
No, you're not.
And marijuana
not natural.
Marijuana side effects don't equate to health problems later.
Right.
I'm talking about the edibles. I'm not talking about smoking it.
Right.
Of course, any kind of smoking is going to damage your lungs sooner or later.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you eat gummy. You do gummies, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I do gummies and tinctures.
I don't even know.
Ever do a gummy your first time? I got a story about that one myself. Okay, so I'm going to bust myself. I want you to remember, I live in a state where you cannot buy pot. Yes.
Hold on. This is a school teacher, retired school teacher.
A retired school teacher. That's part of my story. So you can't buy it and you can't sell it in the state, but you can have it. You can possess it. Now, what that means is you got to have a friend who will give it to you. So when I was in college, I smoked a lot of weed and it was so much fun. It was like fun. It was laughing. It was great. And then I got to be a school teacher and then I had to not do all of that. They never drug tested me, but I was never, we had dogs run through the school, through the parking lot. I wasn't going to get busted with weed. So, and I had gotten a little bit older. So about 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine came by and I went out to talk to his girlfriend in the car and she rolled down the window. I was like, wow, that smells good. And she's like, I was just hitting on this on the road. And she's like, you want it? And I was like, sure. I didn't buy it. I wasn't going to sell it. I took one hit of that thing and that it was so much more like hallucinogenics than what I smoked in college. It was not even the same thing. I don't even want to ever touch it again because it's so different now. And it wasn't like the high fun feeling. It was like I'd close my eyes and like a large pink elephant would float across my vision. I mean, I'm not kidding. This shit was like so different than, it's totally different stuff than it was 20, 30 years ago.
It is. It's like I said, people were smoking the leaf back when I was a kid. It was like you get a freaking leaf and it's like a big deal. They crush it up and they smoke it. Nowadays, that's old school shit. They don't even pay that stuff any attention. It gets ground up and reused as fertilizer.
But I had a gummy one time and I was like, a friend of mine gave me, and I took a little bite of it. It was like the one time I took mushrooms and had to sit in subway in Key West for like 2 hours because I was too wasted to stand up. So, but that's right. But in between, while I was teaching and dealing with students, I never did any of that. So I did want to try. But you're right.
I was kind of on the. I've been on the fence when all this legalization came about and stuff, and I just, my take is a little bit different, and a lot of people disagree with me, but the problem that I saw with it is like I've been to Colorado, and when you walk in places in Colorado that have young teenage kids and they're all walking around, Rachel, I'm telling you, this is the truth.
Oh,
they're all
been to
high.
Colorado about 8 times.
They're all high, and this is the problem I had with it. It was like
they're about it is, John. The kids you saw getting high, they were going to get high regardless of whether it was legal or not. They're just doing it out in the open now.
But now the problem I had with it though was it was literally candy now. It's not. It wasn't. Being rolled up in a doobie or a blunt.
They're getting a hold of shit that's got a lab sticker on it.
I get it, but that's the problem that I sort of have with it is, where does it stop? Because when they wrote the law, and they talked about THC, they didn't talk about the derivatives and what it was going to be used for. So they took advantage of the law and they started making candies. And I get it. I'm okay with it, but it's just like it's being abused. It's not like somebody like you that needs it. It's
being abused before it was
laying around. We have so many THC, so much like poison control with little kids because they eat gummy Flintstones and gummy everything else. They get hold of one of their parents.
And we could get in a huge debate about this, but
with any parent that's being irresponsible and doesn't put their medicine up.
I agree.
The methadone clinics make you, if you get take homes, the methadone clinic makes you get a lock box to keep your bottles in. So kids can't get into that crap. There's
it's just, and here's the point that I want to make. And the point is, when I was a kid, and I'd have to look it up. Somebody probably look it up before I get off the show. But the THC content in marijuana was virtually nothing compared to what it is now. So when somebody says to me, Rachel, you may disagree that weed is not addictive. Well, I can tell you right now, I know 2 people that are highly addicted to weed. They can't go without smoking weed. They are addicted 100% because the THC content is so great today because of the technology that has gone into hydroponically growing this plant. It's on quadruple amounts of steroids, and it's not the same plant it was. Hell, they've even engineered an 8-leaf freaking plant.
Well, now I got to find somebody to give my weed to.
That's not engineering. It's taking the best genetics out of each strain and putting them together and making a better, stronger plant.
Well, but that is kind of engineering, though. I mean, it takes.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, this is 30, 40 years of cultivation you're talking about, only to gain about 10% higher THC content.
You think it's that little? I think it's way more.
No, because there's always been weed that hit in the 20s. They've got stuff that's high as 31. Now there's some medical stuff that's really expensive that it can get up to 40%. But when you're suffering from cancer and you don't have an appetite, you're going to need something with a high THC content in it and high CBN ratio.
And you better not be using it all up now for when you need it, though, right?
Yeah, you need a prescription. That's what I think. Not from a doctor in a
there's
little
some
white
people
coat.
that'll say there's not a difference between recreational marijuana and medicinal marijuana, and there really is.
Yeah, there is.
Well, I can tell you right now, I've seen and I've never witnessed it before, except for the past 2 decades now, 20 years. I mean, but when I was a kid, people weren't crazy over weed like they are today. I mean, I can't go anywhere. I went to play pickleball. And I'm outside. I don't want to smell it. I don't want to smell skunk while I'm playing freaking pickleball.
I will say that's well. I mean, I do edibles. I believe if you're going to smoke it, there's a time and a place for that. Just like public displays of affection with your significant other.
I took my mother to Vegas, and we stayed in the Venetian, and it had the gondola that you can get in the gondola, and so I took my mom out there, and it was a Friday night. We'd been there all week, and it came about Friday, so all the locals come out on Friday and Saturday, and it clearly says no smoking all over the place, right? Well, when the locals started coming out, there was probably a 7.5-month pregnant chick comes walking up with her boyfriend and a bunch of other dudes, and my mom and I are standing there on the bridge. It's a nice event. You're watching people that just got married. It's a happy time, and they're getting in the gondola, they're hugging each other. It's just a love fest. So my mom thought it was really nice, and I'm standing there with my mom, and next thing you know, 2 people next to me and a pregnant lady's firing up a big doobie and just blowing it basically in our face. And I said, "Whoa, time out. Go over there and smoke that. It's a free country." I said, "Yeah, and I shouldn't have to smell your freaking ganja bullshit with my mother standing right here when it clearly says no smoking right there." I said, "I'll tell you what," I pulled out my phone. I said, "I'm going to videotape you, 7-month pregnant chick, and I'm going to post it on my Facebook showing you smoking a freaking doobie when you're pregnant." They couldn't get out of there quick enough. But it's disgusting. There's no respect for anyone anymore. I mean, I don't mind the gummies and stuff, but damn it, don't blow that shit in my face. I don't want to smell it.
Yeah,
I should have the right not to have to smell that shit. I'm sorry.
Right. Potency 1995 was approximately 4%. 2014, it was up to 12%. Now it's up to 30-some% of THC.
No, there's always been weed that's been at least 20%. That was even back in the 90s.
Sybil is like
When I was in, I think the most I ever saw was like 14-15%, and that was ganja shit. That
right, that was grown indoors.
Yeah, it was. It was getting into your elbow size, freaking.
Well, John, let me
buds.
To you. The medicinal side of this issue is, when somebody has COPD, they can get a strain that is really high in apinine and bpinine. And pinene opens up your lungs like an antibutyral inhaler, and it does it a lot better. There is no side effects. And there's certain strains of marijuana for certain things. It's just like the Charlotte's Web was good with seizures. It's they're cultivating for a reason. It's not just for people getting stoned.
Right.
They with people with PTSD, you want a strain that doesn't have any paranoia, but you want a strain that's not going to lay you in the couch all day and make you,
Well, let me ask you something, Rach. I mean, I know we got off topic here and we're talking about dope, but
Way off.
we're talking about, people don't consider it dope anymore, but you're taking gummies. Are you building up a resistance?
No.
No?
No, I'll take about half one in the morning before I go do what I got to do. And when I get home, I take them at night, and I don't have any PTSD nightmares. I don't have any anxiety. The only anxiety I have is when I pull into a gas station or I'm idled in the car. That's the only real, and I won't even go into a restaurant unless I can sit with my back to the wall so I can see the doors.
Oh,
It's
I'm like
just
that
weird.
anyway.
Well, I mean, you're a cop. You had to be like that. I mean, yeah.
In fact, it's funny you say that because that just happened yesterday when my kids went in ahead of me and I made them switch seats with me and sit on the other side of the booth.
Right. Because
I carry, and I told them, I said, if anybody comes busting in here, I want to be able to, protect my family and anyone else.
They wanted, but to take a gummy, and you're looking at this gummy and it has no withdrawals, no side effects. I've gone 2 weeks without them and it didn't change me at all.
Right.
So when you're talking about a drug, when I think of a drug, I think of something that's going to have some really severe side effects, or it's going to break your body down over time, or it's going to alter your mind in some kind of way or make you physically addicted. And marijuana for me is none of that. I'd much rather take a half a gummy than SSRI drugs or depression medication or anxiety medication. Benzodiazepine.
What do you think about shrooms? Inga says that shrooms is going to be legalized soon.
Well, I don't know. Shrooms is one of those things I think needs to be done behind closed doors.
Yeah, because I tell you what, one of my oldest boys called me one day, and he's the one that's got 3 degrees from Embry-Riddle. And he's like, and he's like acting weird. And I'm like, and you heard him on the interview that I did with him on the show. He says, Dad, I was on shrooms. I wasn't drunk. Starts talking about the freaking colors in the trees. I can see every color in the spectrum, Dad. You have no idea what I can see. And this is a kid that's never done anything.
Wow.
He's never drank, never did anything. And all of a sudden he's doing shrooms. And that was his first experience.
They were microdosing. Shrooms for people with PTSD really bad. They did a lot of studies on that.
Sharon said they're legal in Oregon.
And that toad, whatever that toad is that Tyson
my God,
likes to do.
Yeah.
That what?
You can go get ketamine treatments, microdose ketamine treatments.
Oh, right.
And you can go get LSD treatments, microdose LSD treatments at some of these places. It's like you go there, it's like a camping trip, like a trip.
I'm not that willing to give up that much control.
What's funny is at one time, I don't know if I still have it, but I had the largest blotter LSD bust in Central Florida back at one time. 150,000 hits. It was a Bible. He had the pages in a Bible. It was in a hotel room, and it was like a book.
Funny, but
and he put it, and he used a hotel room Bible. So when he was in the hotel room, no one would think anything, and that's where he dealt was. So I go in there, and my snitch told me that's where he was keeping them. Sure enough, he had 2 Bibles full of them. And they were a little perforated, cut up sheets with little perforated squares, and they were of naked ladies. 150,000 hits.
When I
That
was
guy
in
went
college, we had two things in the cupboard. We had macaroni, Kraft macaroni and cheese boxes, a container of milk, some butter, and my roommate kept like probably 50 hits of window pane acid in the freezer at all times. Oh God, it was a trip. But you know, that was a weird thing was that, and then I wondered why people would come in my room at night and go, wow, look at this, like, cool. I had this weird 3D poster that looked like it moved, and there'd be like 4 people in my bedroom staring at the big poster. I was like, oh, Christine. But anyway.
All right, y'all. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up. I gotta work early, and that was a great show.
That
You
was a
know, it's
great
probably
show.
not what everybody wanted to hear, but I just wanted to, you know, give kind of my idol an opportunity to shine and talk about what we should be talking about. You know, wanted to get into, you know, the mindset, what it took to do an investigation. You know, how he broke down, you know, Gerald Stano, and the way he did it was with just being nice, just treating him like a human being, and developing a rapport. And you know that does work. And Gerald Stano forgot he was a cop. Honest to God, he did. And you know he confessed to a lot of homicides, and I believe just based on, you know, the little things that I know, and you know I saw a couple pictures that were pretty horrific. I believe that the man, you heard him say he was doing, what did he say, 16 a year?
A year.
You know,
Because he liked it.
because he liked it. And you know he's not your then that, and another thing is just goes to show you that, you know, his MO wasn't the same every time. Now he picked up people that needed rides, but you know the modus operandi, you know what he used to kill them wasn't the same.
And really the motive was that he hated women. I mean,
He was a
like, that's
misogynist.
not a
And
motive
who
that you think about as a motive.
who else can we relate to that we believe hates women?
That's what my thought was.
And who else did we cover here recently that I believe has a link that we know was a misogynist?
And that's all I mean, that could be all the motive that there is. It's not a real motive. It's a big, I don't know, it's a brain weirdness.
So, you know, and I tell my daughter, and you know, my daughter is, you know, she's 20 now, but she is so sweet. And she's like in high school, she had a handicapped kid that, you know, was enamored with her, and he couldn't, you know, he was in a wheelchair, and you know, he called her all the time, and I said, don't you ever be mean to him. Ever. Never be mean to him. And she never was. But you know how many people were? And those are the type of people that could, you know, one little thing could set them off. You know, so, you know, just parents, tell your kids, don't be mean like that. Your daughters especially, don't, if you got to let somebody down, be cool about it. Don't be nasty. Don't hurt, because people, you know, people react differently today because we don't have this anymore. Honestly, we don't have what we're doing right now. You've heard me say it before. We're all, you know, kids today are keyboard tough guys and tough girls. They don't have the communication skills and aren't able to deal with rejection and being picked on like people my age were. They flip out. They commit suicide, or they hurt other people. I mean, it's evident. We're always going to have serial killers. That's never going to stop. You know, we won't always know why. You know, we can all just speculate, but again, we don't have to know the motive.
But be nice is a really good. Be nice to everybody.
And be nice to everybody. You know, and that's,
They'll do.
you know, and people will probably say, well, John, you weren't nice to people. Yeah, it's different. I drove a point to stop the lies. And you know what? I've come to a point now where these other creators that they're just making absolute fools out of themselves, and let them do it. Because anybody that listens to them, in my opinion, this is my opinion, you're straight up idiots. Straight up idiot if you were to go to a show like Dago's show and listen to that garbage. Straight up idiot if you're going to go to any of these shows, Clue, and listen to her garbage. That's just my opinion. But people will do it because it's the Jerry Springer effect. We won't do that here. We're going to bring facts. We're going to bring some intellectual conversation. We're going to have more people on. Oh, by the way, y'all, stay tuned. Probably Monday or tomorrow or Tuesday. I'm thinking maybe Tuesday. Maybe Wednesday. I'm not sure yet. Matt's going to be back on. I've been talking to Matt a lot lately. So we're going to have Matt back on. And we got a theory that I think you guys are all we're going to break down some law. We're going to break down actual law from Idaho. It's going to blow your minds. And probably the defense probably ought to be listening to it because it's pretty compelling stuff. And if they haven't thought of it, they'll probably use it. I'm on the fence whether to do the show or not. We'll probably give them some hints. But I've been talking to Matt. What's that?
Do it Wednesday. I've got class Tuesday.
All right. Well, I got to figure out what his schedule is.
I know.
I think he's on a flight right now, but yeah, we'll shoot for maybe Wednesday. I'll talk to him. We'll put it together. We're doing an outline now, but we're going to break down, and I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, but we're going to break down laws in Idaho that will floor a lot of you that we thought were the exact opposite. And that's all I'm going to say.
Cool. And
we're all thinking that. We're all thinking this certain thing, and we're all wrong. And we're going to prove it. And it's going to give people a lot to think about when it comes to BK and the potential defense that would probably be presented if he had smart attorneys, which I don't think he does. But after they watch the show, they'll probably come up with it because it's pretty genius. So we're going to have Matt on. We're going to talk about it. So you guys have anything you want to say? Rachel, you're gone? What happened to Rachel? All right, Diane, thank you. Thanks to the mods. Thank you, everybody. Mindy, Diane, Kim, everybody, Rachel, Stacy, everybody that came on tonight and helped. I love the show. Hopefully a lot of people come back and watch it and really listen to what Chief Crow had to say. And we were shooting from the hip. That was unrehearsed, y'all. 100% unrehearsed.
Give me something good to listen to in the car on the way to Richmond next week.
Oh, we appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and hopefully have a great work week. God bless.
Thanks, John. It was wonderful.
Peace out.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.